problem with it, so we're gonna do Bill 84 and 85 first, Mr. Hammond. Bill 84. and then
Bill
we'll turn it over.
84 amends Article 395 by adding a number of definitions, authorizing the Director of Community and Economic Development, or the designee, the authority to waive city fees, and increases the number of fees to better capture the cost of providing the particular service.
Mr. Langer.
Thank you. So with Bill 84, what we're looking to do is after a year or so of consideration, looking at the amount of work we do and the amount of activity that happens, we decided that we needed to align our fees with the amount of work that's being done. So right now I have with me Matthew Rajoskic, who's the supervisor on the building and permit, and he's gonna go over the details of the bill.
So as you go over the bill here, you'll see a lot of underlining and new sections. I'd like to point out, a lot of this is housekeeping with regards to creating definitions as a way of being more transparent towards the public as to how we view things. It helps us align how fees are appropriated towards specific types of permits and how they are easily defined. In the fee schedule, two major things that I would point out is that change with regards to fees would be application fees. Application fees would be applied to all permit types, building, electrical, mechanical, plumbing, and they're broken out as fees for residential and commercial. The reason why we are trying to move towards the application fee is because we are incurring costs for work that is not compensated through being permitted. Oftentimes, applications will come in, they'll remain in the office for several weeks, several months. There are some that are there for several years. And we have done the work of reviewing, putting them into the system, and placing them in our archive system for them to be picked up. In addition to that, this bill, a housekeeping end of it, creates a pathway for us to say, after 6 months, you have not picked up your permit, we are not considering an application anymore, and that application is no longer valid. You have to reapply. It's a way to motivate people to make sure that when they are doing their project, that they are definitive, that they are going to start the project and bring it to a completion. One of the other major features that we are implementing in this particular fee schedule is a adjustment to the way the archive fee is being instituted. Previously, all permits were given a flat fee of $10 for archiving. I brought visual aids here to explain why I feel that a graduated scale of archiving is more appropriate. So the way the archive fee is set up in this particular fee schedule, which is on page 9, item number 12. This would affect any permits with a valuation of $50,000 and up. To give you an example of something that a project that is about $50,000 for the building end of it is what I have in my hand here. We have several projects going on in the city, and in the past have several projects that have gone up that are multi-million-dollar projects. An example of that, and bear with me, it was an extreme example, but I think it drives home the point, is if you were to look at the large set of plans I have here, and times this by 5, that is a set for the arena. Hundreds, tens of millions was the arena. We are by law required to retain these records in perpetuity until the building has been demolished. So as you see, a $10 fee for a set of records about this big, and then a $10 fee for a set of records that are several times larger for us to maintain and keep is just, it's very incongruent. So that's why it's based upon the graduated fee, and the cost, the percentage that I put in there was basically specifically trying to target more so the commercial work where you're heading to $50,000 and more in cost of work. So that is the brunt of the fee changes. And as I said before, a lot of the other things are more so housekeeping than anything else.
And just to add on to that, as he was talking about as far as keeping these on record, as you can see, trying to archive these type of plans, and you know that we're dealing with the issue of storage space on, from IT, but also as far as storage space itself, physical storage space, again, we're running into those issues of having lack of it. So again, we're trying to align those fees with the amount of work that's being done. And when you can look at these plans to see them being reviewed, this is not just a 20-minute or 30-minute plan review when you're talking 4 or 5 of these type of plans sitting there. So again, just trying to align up the plans with the cost. So we're open to any questions you guys may have.
Page 10, the fees, the electric, master electrician license and whatnot. Those are the current fees, they're not being raised, it's just,
That's correct. The reason why it seems like it's underlined is just plain simply, I moved it from another section. It's
Okay.
not a new fee.
and the surcharge is new though, right?
With,
Or was that there already? On page 11, if you don't renew your license by the 31st of January.
that is not a new fee. That is in here.
Okay. Anybody else from council?
Right?
No.
Disagree?
Thank you. Just so I can understand this correctly, you're saying that, let's see, we're looking at page. What was it, page 9? That's what it is. Sorry. The $10, that's a new fee, right? 12, the one that you were just talking about, page 9?
The $10 fee is an existing fee that is charged to all permits.
Okay, so you're not changing that?
We are not, that becomes the minimum for all permits, so it's not being changed.
Okay. The only, so do you have any other new fees that you put in here?
So as I said at the beginning, the major new fees would be the application fees.
That's the only one? What you said, major, was that me?
Those would be the ones that add a cost. One that we also included, if you look on page 10, item number 14.
Okay.
The city of Allentown has permits, they only last a year. Oftentimes when a permit is expired,
And of the application.
yes, but if someone was to, for reinstatement
What
of
is
the
that?
permit,
Can you tell me, can you give me an
So-
example, I mean?
if someone has an expired permit,
Let's say I pull up the permit to do an electrical job in my house, okay? They're all residential or they all commercial?
that would apply to everything. This-
Commercial and residential?
Yes.
So if I have a house and I need to put an outlet or something, whatever it may be, and it expires, and I don't put it in within the allotted amount of time that you give me,
Mhm.
and I wanna get a new permit, you wanna charge me $100?
It would be that or paying the minimum fee, which would be actually more expensive.
Although although the work would probably cost me like $50 the most, 25, I have to pay $100 to the city just to get the permit.
Correct.
But you gotta keep in mind, though, what he's saying is, to draw that permit itself is gonna cost you more than $100. When you let that permit expire after a year, okay, if you have, because it expires, so that means now you would have to come back in and reapply for a whole new permit, which is gonna cost you more than the reinstatement fee of $100.
Okay.
Regardless of the work you're doing, yeah, your outlet may cost $25, but you took a year, the permit's only good for a year.
Okay, but I got you. So let's say that I wanna change an outlet and I need a permit,
Mhm.
okay? So how much do I have to pay at the beginning? How much is that permit?
Well, we can't go by that, because permits are different, and an outlet, that doesn't require a permit.
What would require a permit?
It's
Give
basically,
me an idea. I'm not a musician, I don't get permits, so give me an idea.
That we can't really give you an idea, because it's really gonna depend on what you come in with and what you're doing.
Well, if you wanna change the toilet, for example, okay, you have no toilet, you wanna change the toilet, you have to get a permit.
No, if you're changing just the fixture, you don't need a permit for just changing the toilet in a residential.
So
Let's do drywall.
you can,
Yeah.
Yes, we'll do drywall, so,
Okay,
that's a
drywall.
tough one too.
anything, please.
Allow me to use building permits. A building permit at its minimum fee is $114.50. That is the minimum you'll pay for a building permit. So,
And building, you're not talking about structure, just
no,
one
I'm
building.
talking
It
about,
could be a house, it could be a building,
I'm talking about the simplest job that we
20,
can charge for.
20 stories, 16 stories, or it could be a house that is a single story. It costs the same amount for everyone.
In relation to this fee, reinstating an expired permit, yes.
Yes, okay.
It's,
But in relation to just getting the first permit,
the first permit, it would be, at a minimum, your first permit, at a very minimum, your first permit would be $114.50.
what's the minimum job that you require permits for? I'm sorry, I just trying to figure it out so I know what I'm voting on.
It's-
Because I don't fill out permits.
It's a tough question to answer, not because I want to be vague, it's just that there's so many possibilities.
So, anything, I mean, you know,
If someone wants to re-sheet rock their ceiling,
huh?
if someone wants to re-sheet rock their ceiling, or throw a couple of
Okay,
new drywall,
so if I wanna change a drywall in my house,
Mhm.
do I need a permit?
yes.
Okay, so drywall costs, let's say, $10, okay? It's probably less, but let's say $10 for drywall.
No. Take more.
A sheet of drywall costs more than $10, let's say 15, let's say 20.
Are you getting a 20 by 12 footer or 20?
Let's say a 10 foot. 10 by 4, that's the total, 10 by 4 is the height, right?
3/4 inch or half inch?
Half an inch. I'm gonna put it in the bathroom.
Square footage?
Wait, 12 by, 10 by 4, so it's 40,
Okay.
40 square foot.
The fee schedule for that would be based upon a building alteration. Building alteration can start at $50 minimum. And then on top of that, you have a CO, you have the archive fee, and you have the state fee on top of that.
So if I wanna change, okay, in my house, somebody punches, I have a house, but somebody, I rent, somebody punches, I have to change the drywall. Okay, so it costs $20, let's say, to change the drywall.
And
I have to get a permit, I have to pay somebody, but I have to get a permit to, and how much those permits is saying, there's 3 of them at least?
if you have to get a permit, it's at a minimum, it would be about $114.50 at a minimum. When you're talking with someone punching a hole in a piece of sheet rock and you're just patching it, no, we don't require a permit for that.
Well, they got mad and they were fighting, they punched a couple of holes, one here, one there, one.
So, just one second, so just talking with Bill Harvey's been here, for over 10 years. So the cheapest permit we've ever done, like Matt was saying, is probably $114. So again, that's the cheapest permit as of now. But again, depending on what you're gonna be doing, it can raise from there. So that's a very tough question to answer. But you talk about the minimum amount, it's $114.
See, the reason why I ask this question for the public, sake is because I hear that our permit fees are higher than most municipalities in Canada.
Not true. No.
That's not true, not higher than Buffalo. I tell you, somebody told me this just recently, but you're saying no, I mean,
You have to compare apples to apples.
Yes.
When you're doing these fees. So, someone using an example to you, I can't answer their permit fee because I don't know the extent of work, the scope of work. And is the driver of permit fees, the scope of work.
I just gave you one, I said change the drywall,
Yeah.
and you said it cost me at least $110 and $14 to, as a permit, plus the drywall cost let's say $20, the most, they don't cost that much, by the way.
That's
I know that for a fact. But they used to cost $3 way back in the day, so they probably cost 10, 15, okay?
But
So,
the cost of us providing that service is probably around $150. So,
just for the permit.
including the inspection, review, data input, that's pretty much how much we are expecting.
Okay, I got you. So, all the permits that you have here that you wanna change, did you put them in here already? All of them?
Excuse me?
Did you note all the permits, fees that you wanna change? Like I see one here from $4 to $50.
What page are you on?
Fee of, may not be, I'm on page 12, middle of the page. The $50 minimum, 4 to 15.
Which item?
54. It's a 54, but I think it's a $4 minimum.
I think it's $4 minimum to a maximum of 50, I think, right?
$50.
Yeah, that's not a change in the fee. It's, that's just, that was put in there for,
There's no change in that.
no.
You can see they're crossing out the capital F, capital 4, and making a lowercase 4. There's no change.
Okay. The only part that I'm a little confused is that you say you will give you the ability to set the permits. But
No, just to, not to set the permit, just to waive the
not to
fees.
set, I'm sorry, to waive the fees,
Yeah.
okay.
Certain ones, depending on, because, we'll use your example. You come in and you have an outlet, and the permit's expiring or just about to expire. Is that something that we can waive that fee for? Because why would we want to charge you $100 if it's gonna be as small? But as long as you're gonna say you're gonna do the work and we can go out there and get it inspected within the next day. But we're not talking about waiving massive fees. These are for, again, the small homeowners who are trying to get the work done, and we want to encourage them to get the work done.
I like that, that's exactly where I'm going. I like that there are some people who have, old homes, and they buy it, they wanna fix them up, and then, they have a certain amount of the budget. They don't wanna be paying so much money to the city just to fix their house on permit, when they can actually use that to fix their houses and make them look nice.
We're in agreement with you in that, and that's why we want that, but at the same time, you guys have to keep into consideration that our inspectors sometimes go out to these houses 4 or 5, not even just houses, but any inspection, they go out there sometimes 4, 5, 6 times. And when they go out there, they just don't go out there and say, okay, you failed. They go out there and try to coach and teach and explain to the owner of how, or whoever it is, whether it's the electrician, the plumber, whoever it is, to explain to them, hey, this is how you need to get this done. So, again, the service we provide with that permit fee, again, that's including with the inspection. So, again, we go out there once, twice, and the next you know, we're out there 4 or 5 more times. But we are
That
looking
should
to.
be, by the way.
Mhm.
I think the way it should be is, you go in there, you tell them what they need to do, what is wrong, and then you come back. It may be, they may do one thing wrong or two things wrong, and you tell them, hey, look, you need to do it this way. Next time you come back, you pass or fail. That's the way it should be, good.
In reality, we can charge a reinspection fee, and every time we go back out after that. But again, these are things that, as I told you guys when I took the seat, that we're starting to make sure we follow the code. So in some cases, we are starting to enforce that, absolutely. And you all will probably be getting phone calls on that when we start enforcing that part of the code. That when we go out there 3, 4, 5 times, that's a waste of time.
It is, it is.
So, in essence, we're trying to work with the owners, with the ability to waive those smaller fees. But at the same time, we're trying to encourage them to get the work done, so we don't have to continue to go out there and keep these permits open for over a year.
I agree with that, keeping it open and true, I agree
Yeah.
with that, but, I don't wanna take it, so you people breathing hard, so they probably wanna ask some other questions. But thank you anyway.
Thanks.
No, for that.
Okay. This side? Mr. Robbins?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I was trying, I was pretty quietly, so it wasn't me. Mr. Light, I have a couple quick questions. So concerning the reinstatement fee, I guess I have a question related to two aspects of it. Number one is, if we're looking at a large project that would have a large fee cost on it, so something commercial, something that's for-profit, and for whatever reason, they're looking to renew the fee in a long-term sense, are we cutting resources off there that we potentially need? Because as you said, that's gonna be a more intense and more systematic review that's gonna be needed. So are we potentially cutting resources off there that we might wanna consider putting a cap on this as to if it's over a certain amount, we charge the minimum fee as opposed to this $100 reinstatement fee?
Actually, that's a very good concept, but I would leave that to the point, leave that up to you, but I would say from our standpoint, we're trying to get the project completed.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
So if it is a commercial project and we see that, commercial or residential, and we see they're moving along, but as you mentioned, if it's a larger scale project, we're seeing the progress happen.
Right.
But I don't know if we've ever really run into that where
Okay.
a commercial would actually have to extend beyond that if the project is still going forward. Have you seen anything like that?
It happens. It's, you see a lot of large projects downtown, and they do run past the 1 year. But instead of charging them the higher fee, we're at least creating a flat fee for them just to continue on.
Keep the project moving.
Right.
And additionally, under the current structure, and the way it is done in the computer, they have to reapply, literally write out their permits, reapply, and a new permit number is issued. That does two things. Well, I'm sorry, it does one major thing for us with regards to accounting. It doesn't, it accounts, double accounts for permits. So when you're asking us for
Right.
Permit statistics, we're giving you permit numbers based upon projects that are already ongoing.
Mhm.
And so this is also a means for us to continue with the continuity of things and get a better grasp of our permitting in the city.
Would it be possible, because obviously this isn't gonna come up for a final vote until we have the budget vote. So would it be possible to just run the numbers in that and see if, say, over the last 2 years, what it would look like? If we're talking 1 or 2 projects and it wasn't really a big fee, then there's obviously no need for that. But if it's something where we're looking at thousands of dollars that have gone towards the costs that we have, maybe we can look at putting a ceiling on this before the final. Would you be amenable to that, Mr. Leitner?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
We can look into that.
Thank you. And then the next question I have concerning the waiving of the fees is a sort of a matrix and a process to determine that. Because obviously, as every one of my colleagues knows, I'm more concerned about what's going to happen 25 years from now when none of us are here than I am, say, with the current administration or the current members of council. So I'm more concerned about what someone who sits in your chair, Mr. Leitner, in 15 years could do with that authority than I am per se with you. So what are you looking to design in terms of a decision-making matrix to make sure that it's not just sort of whim?
I haven't finalized any type of matrix yet, but we will, and we can put something together and present that to you as well.
Would you feel comfortable if, when you have that complete, if we codified that through legislative action? So that way it is established, just parameters, not necessarily specific requirements, but the outline parameters, so that, again, it's just something where it might not be a tool that whoever follows you in years to come would use, so it gets lost in the shuffle and then someone has the ability to use it to an unfortunate conclusion. With everything we've gone through in the last year, I just think if we can ever put limits in place on something, it's probably a good idea. So would you be amenable to that as well once you have that matrix?
How would we just,
Sure.
can we just put that right in the ordinance,
If you're comfortable with that, absolutely. I'd be fine with that. I just didn't know if you would have that available by the time we'd be ready for a vote in 2.5 weeks.
Oh, yeah. I got a good team. We're
Right. No, listen, you do have a very good team, Mr. Leitner, and I know you guys can put whatever you put your minds to. So that'd be great. Yeah, if we could make those changes to this, I think that would go a long way towards making this a much stronger bill. So those are my only questions. Thank you very much, Mr. Leitner, and thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Anybody else on council? Anybody from the public? Okay, kind of did this backwards, this should have been a committee. So,
Committee of the whole.
it's a committee of the whole, right, we changed it. Executive privilege. So I guess we need a motion.
Do we, well, Mr. Hanlon, you and I have been talking about this earlier. Has this been introduced to the full body yet?
Yes.
Okay, so I was, with my being absent 2 weeks ago, I wasn't certain on that. So I'll make a motion to forward this favorably contingent on the 2 items discussed with Mr. Leitner being added to the bill.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
You have a second for Ms. Apple? Well, let me just get clarity. Well, we're doing the committee in the whole here, anyway.
Yeah.
So, all right, so.
And she's on the committee also.
To forward it, a motion has been made to forward it favorably to the December 5th council meeting on South Development budgets. We do it by common consent.
Common consent sounds good.
Common consent?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. All right, Bill 85.
Bill 85, amends the community and economic development fees by increasing zoning and planning fees, permit application fees, multiple plan review fees, establishing a HARB application and review fee.
Mr. Leitner, this sounds like it's your ballgame again.
It is. All right, we're in the same field too, so, what you're gonna pass out to you is a small breakdown of what the fees are we're suggesting. I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Stewart and the planning director to again go over the details of the fee increases and changes.
Okay, good evening, members of council. What we're proposing to do is to increase several of the fees that relate to planning and zoning. The concept, especially as we're seeing such large development that's occurring along Hamilton and about to occur at the waterfront, is to take the burden off the taxpayers and to increase fees that the developer for-profit would be paying. What you have in front of you is an exhibit that shows what the current fees are, and in red, the changes that we're suggesting. I did a fair amount of research comparing to other locations, other cities, and I find that these are actually lower than most major cities, but again, the whole purpose is to place, and I'm not going to call it a burden, but to place higher fees where our costs actually go to. When we get a zoning application, when we get a large office building application, we spend a lot of time, salary time, benefit time, in reviewing them. And so what I'm suggesting is we should increase where, and it's not a real high increase, but increase what the developer of a large project would pay, and take the burden off of the general citizenry. Otherwise, the amount of money that we're actually collecting comes more from the citizenry than it does from the developer. And that is the concept. I'll give you an example. I just did the math a few minutes ago. If we had a 2-acre site on Hamilton, or whether it's down at the waterfront, and an 80,000 square foot office building, we're only looking at charging about $6,000 to the developer. Believe me, with salary and benefits, we're spending more than that, because we have engineers, public works, planners, zoning officers, all looking at those plans. What I'm suggesting that we do here is try to cover the costs that we incur, so that the developer, pays. And I've done this for many, many years, where I realize the developer is very willing to pay reasonable review fees in order to get the approvals. And what we're suggesting here is not exorbitant. And one thing that we have not been charging, and this is probably an oversight over the years, is things related to the historical review board. We just haven't charged fees, and we just added some nominal things here for that. But again, the point to be made, and if you have questions about specific increases, I'd be glad to answer them, but the point is that the large developers should bear the burden of our costs that the city is paying.
All right, so at this time, based off what you have in front of you, we're open to any questions you may have.
Okay. Start over with that.
Okay. I'm gonna go first.
Yeah,
You wanna
go ahead.
first? You sure? Of course. Okay, thank you.
It's gonna be one of you anyhow.
Hey,
Tennis match. Yeah.
that's what we're here for. I like the idea of having the big developers, take the burden from the little guys and the people who don't have as much funds to fix their properties. The only question I have is the hard violation of review. $300 for a review, one shot. I think it's a little bit steep. I think if you have $25 staff review approval, the review, hard review is $25, but then you have hard violation review, $300. Why is it so?
I'm gonna have Mr. Kimberly talk on that, because he actually is the one that does all these reviews. So,
Okay, the reason for the $300 fee for review of a violation is due mostly to the amount of time that I put into doing work related to a violation. It's a lot of back and forth with the property owner, it's a lot of trying to get them to comply, it's a lot of phone calls, it's a lot of letters that go out. It's just a very burdensome process. So $300 probably is on the low side for how many hours I put into a violation for harm.
So, right now, you're not charging them anything.
Right.
You're only charging $300 right at the beginning of installing fees.
It's a steep increase, but considering,
But it's not
again,
an increase, it's a new fee.
well, it's a new fee, correct, yes. It's from 0 to 300. So, again, the reason for that is because of the fact that how much time gets put into a violation. It could be done incrementally, start maybe with 150.
I would suggest that you lower it, probably do it incrementally. I would say that, I mean, that's your job, right?
Yeah.
well, wait, one moment.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Again, when we talked about, and we didn't want to bring up, because this is going to be part of the budget talk, but we didn't want to bring up anything about positions. But Mr. Kimberly's position is a chief planner. So he's actually functioning in two roles. So when he's telling you that he spent really almost 90% of his time, if not more, is with historic preservation. So I don't actually have someone that's really focused on chief planner work. So when we're talking about positions and we're talking about how we don't have, the funding to staff positions, well, that's why, because we have people functioning in several different positions where the one position is not getting the actual need that's needed for the city. So he is not functioning right now in the chief planner. He's strictly pretty much historic. And we're not receiving any type of monetary compensation for that from the city to cover that. And if we want to do it better, and really have him focus on that 100% of his time and really focus on historic preservation, then it should be a full-time position.
Well, and I'm glad you pointed that out, because I see Mr. Kimberly everywhere, and he does a good job.
He does.
It's not an issue of Mr. Kimberly itself, it's an issue of the position, as well, regardless of who's there. I think the concern that I have is, right now, everything is being done for free. I understand that you want to charge some fees, because these people do get paid, although majority of the hard work, they're volunteer, aren't they?
Correct.
So, are you the only paid staff in the hard work?
He's city staff.
I have a clerk that does work for me, like, related to violations.
Is that credit, city staff as well?
She's responsible for sending out letters and things like that, yes. So there is involvement from another staff person in violations in particular.
I mean, I understand you want to recover some funds from the time, but I think if you do it incrementally, I'll be happier than just give them a $300 fee right away without any, you know what I mean?
Well, remember when we put in fees, we don't just arbitrarily pick a number. We looked at time.
Time spent.
Yes.
But there might be, somebody may have something very simple, it might take 10 minutes.
No.
I don't know, I'm just thinking.
Like Mr. Kimberly said, it's more than just 10 minutes. He goes out to the site, sends the letters, correspondence throughout the days, the weeks, the months. Again, there's a lot of interaction in there, and as well as the research time that it takes to make sure that it's in line with the historic preservation. So it's more than just a 10-minute or day.
I'm trying to save some money to some of these, taxpayers in the center city of Allentown, which is where primarily the poorest individuals of the city live, and, or the lower income, I should say, and they live in a historic house, and a historic property which needs to be brought into the city, for any changes. I understand that. The $25, I'm okay, but $300 are, right away, I think.
What I do to solve a violation is I first send out a notice of violation, which is a regular letter that's sent regular mail, but I don't send out the letter until, first of all, I verify that it is indeed a violation. And I do that by looking at past photographs and things like that. So I'm already spending time just to send out the first letter. If I'm lucky, after the first letter goes out, the property owner will contact me and will say, I already complied. I got your letter, I made a mistake, I fixed the problem. And then that's the end of the process. However, a lot of them end up a second, third letter, and then a court case, potentially. Those are the ones that incrementally add on a lot more work. So maybe what we could do is some type of a fee where if the person complies after the first letter, the fee is less. But if it gets to the point where I've got to the third letter, and they still haven't responded, or they're still not in compliance, then maybe we do the $300 fee.
That sounds more palatable to me, Mr. Kimberly. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Reed, anybody else on this side? Mr. Hendricks, Mr. Hoffman? No. Mr. Robinson?
Yes. Mr. Kimberly, before you sit down, I was gonna handle the stuff with you to not make you jump back up, I'm sorry. Concerning this, so currently right now, if someone is in violation, if you find them in violation, is there a fine that they receive for being in violation currently?
The fine is not instituted or given by the city. There has to be a court case, a civil action.
Right.
With the county magistrate, and if we win the case, then there may be a $300 fine, or it may be more than that. The ordinance says $300 fine, and each day that the violation exists is another violation.
Right.
So it's $300 per day. But often, based on the violation, that's not implemented. And also sometimes the judge in the case might change the fine that the city's asking for.
Okay.
So that's how the fine is implemented.
Right, so the likelihood is that you're not seeing a lot of $300 fines and certainly not a lot of multiple fines, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So with the review approval and the hard review, might be a good idea if you could just quickly walk us through, first of all, the $25 fee for staff review and approval, the $25 fee for the board approval, and then just quickly talk about also what's involved with board review for the violation, because it's not just your time as well, but it's also scheduling a hard board meeting.
Okay, the staff approval, essentially what that is someone will call me on the phone or send me an email or come to the counter and they'll say, I have a project here that I'm replacing shingles on a roof, and the shingles are in compliance with the design guidelines, and I say, okay, I can staff approve that. And what I do is I go on Eden, and there's a process of producing a permit that allows them to do that work. And that's a staff approval, basically, in a nutshell.
Okay.
Now, with a harbor view, that's where a property owner has something that's more involved than what I feel comfortable or that I'm able to staff approve based on the ordinance and the design guidelines. So this might be something that's multiple items, such as roof shingles, replacing porch floorboards, replacing porch posts, replacing windows. And that, I generally would say that has to go to HARB. You have a lot of things here that you're doing that's gonna have to be reviewed, and I have them fill out what's called an application for a certificate of appropriateness, or a COA. And that then gets processed, it gets entered into Eden, and it goes through and gets scheduled for a HARB meeting, and HARB decides, based on their review, whether or not it should be approved or not. There also is the consultant involved in the HARB application process. So there's her time and her involvement as well. Once that's approved by HARB, then it gets passed on to City Council, and City Council finalizes the approval.
Correct. Okay, thank you very much. So then, just for my own edification, the $25 fee for staff review and approval and the $25 HARB review fee, are they going to be independent, or is someone going to apply for staff approval and then also have to apply $25 to go in front of the board? I just want to make sure I know exactly what we're going to charge someone.
No, they would not have to pay both.
Okay, so we're looking at just $25 regardless. We're just treating them as two different fees because of the level of work involved. Okay. And as far as the violation review, I know this is a difficult question to answer, but when you have to deal with a violation, what is a typical amount of time that you have to put into that and that it takes to resolve the issue? And I know this is a difficult question to answer, but if you could maybe just ballpark it.
I would say for a typical average violation, you're probably looking at about a full work week, 40 hours.
Okay, for just a typical one?
Yes.
Right. And then I would also say, if you could give us a rough percentage of ones you deal with where you said they'll address it after the first letter, compared to ones that you have to go through a significant amount of work on, get it in front of the board and to that. Could you give us a rough percentage of the work?
The first scenario that you just mentioned where they comply, or they call me after the first letter and say they already complied, and this might be something simple like a satellite dish removal or something like that. That's actually a very small percentage of what I deal with.
So the majority of what you're dealing with is requiring anywhere from a few days to more than a week, depending upon the complexity of it, and could be much longer if it's a very complex issue.
Correct.
Okay. That's the only questions I have concerning that. I mean, living in a historic district, I understand Mr. Garidi's concerns. However, I do know that one of the ways to encourage property owners, whether they be landlords or homeowners, to comply with these rules is to make it that it is cost effective to comply.
Correct.
So there is a concern with making it that, if they have one violation and they have to pay $300 for a review, it's hopefully less likely that they will want to have another one.
Yeah, and hopefully too, the word gets out.
Exactly. So I thank you very much, Mr. Kimmerly, for that, and then I just have a couple of questions for Mr. Stewart.
Yes, sir.
When you say in the zoning fees, you have here that rezoning is $300 and you want to change that to a zoning ordinance map amendment would be $1,000 and a zoning ordinance text amendment would be $1,000. Could you just give me an example of what each one of those would be?
Well, hey, I'll give you an example that the council will be seeing very shortly.
Okay.
There's a proposal at Susquehanna and Fourth for a Wawa. The property consists of 5 different lots. 4 of them are residentially zoned. 1 is commercially zoned and has been used for commercial use.
Right.
Part of the philosophy that I have for the city is that we need to clean up the zoning map. And so I encourage the applicant not to go to the zoning hearing board, but to actually request a zoning change for the residentially zoned properties. That is a zoning map change.
Okay.
To get to that point, we have to evaluate the entire property. We have to send it to the engineering department, public works, traffic, street trees, and evaluate whether it's an appropriate map change, whether in fact the residentially zoned lots should be commercial. But that would be an example of a zoning map change. Okay, a zoning text change really doesn't happen very often in the city. In other places, in suburban areas, it tends to, where somebody is requesting that the language within the zoning text be changed. That requires basically the same kind of analysis, which is why, we feel we need to cover the costs.
Okay, and with either one of those, do they tend to be more related to, obviously for the city, because you said that the text change doesn't happen as often in the city, but for either one, do they tend to be more related to making something into either a commercial or industrial property? Or, because I'm just trying to figure out, are we gonna be adding this as a fee of someone, to a homeowner per se, or is this more going to be related to commercial development?
On larger parcels in the city, the few that remain, that it could apply for the zoning map or text change, even within changing one kind of residential use to another kind of residential use.
Okay.
For a small property owner, it tends not to happen at all, and in those cases, I would encourage, instead of going through the process of the zoning map or zoning text change, but then go to the zoning hearing board, which is a whole different process and less expensive. But I would say, in most cases, it would relate to commercial properties.
So even in that sense where we might be looking at it, trying to make it residential, it's more going to be someone, potentially a developer, as opposed to a single person who's trying to build their own house.
You're correct. That's exactly the direction that I've, in writing these amendments, was to direct it more towards a developer,
Yep.
not a personal property owner.
Thank you. And that was, I was very curious as to know if I was on the right track there. Could you just give me a breakdown between what would be a major or minor subdivision or a major or minor land development, just so we know what we're looking at when you say those?
There's 2 criteria. One is the number of lots. I think it's 5. 5 or more lots would be considered major for a subdivision. But I also have the discretion as the planning and zoning director to say if there are what I'll call planning issues that are important for the whole planning commission to consider, to classify something as a major. In other words, depending on the amount of impact a proposal might have on the neighborhood or.
So whether it's traffic or infrastructure or things of that nature?
Exactly.
Okay. And with the major and minor land developments, is it roughly the same thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, I wasn't sure if it was subdivision and development might be different on that one. That's the extent of the questions that I have for you, Mr. Stewart, and I thank you very much. It seems like you put a lot of work into this, so thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson. Anything else from council? Just one thing, if you could, for the December meeting that this will be on, get us some of the comparisons that you made with different cities.
I can do that.
Yeah, and hopefully Bethlehem and Easton are on, because being so close, that probably.
I have that data, just not right in front of me.
Yeah, if you could just get that to us by that meeting so we can look at it and see.
I will do that.
Thank you very much. Anything from the public?
Good evening. I'm Dave Huber, 2829 West Elm Street. I'm here tonight to discuss the Historic Architectural Review Board fees being proposed in Section 2. As a HARB chair, I'm asking that you do not impose a fee for the staff review and approval or for cases reviewed by HARB. It's my opinion that these fees would further discourage compliance with HARB regulations and lead to even more violations. We're already dealing with a huge backlog of violations, and many are slipping through the cracks. If you disagree with this view, perhaps you would consider a nominal fee of $5 to $10 for the staff approvals. And commercial or rental properties could be charged a higher amount of $25 to $50. And as far as the proposed fee of $300, I'm in total agreement with that. But there are a few things to consider maybe before you would enact this. Would the properties that have already been issued violations be subject to this fee when it's enacted? And how will this be enforced, and will it be enforced? To the best of my knowledge, the city's only taken one case to the magistrate, and although we won the case, they still didn't have to reverse the violation, they just fined them, and that's senseless to me. And what will the revenue be used for that's generated by this? It would be my suggestion to set aside all this money, however little it may be, and use the fees for a proactive approach to educating the residents of the historic districts and the contractors who are registered with the city on the rules, regulations, and procedures, as well as the benefits of historic preservation for them, as well as the city. So many people have bought homes in the historic districts for the benefits and the protections that they provide. And I feel it's the city's responsibility to make sure that this is done. This burden shouldn't be put on the people preserving the properties. It's the city's responsibility to preserve their history. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Huber, one quick question.
Yeah.
So you say you're opposed to the staff review approval fee of $25.
Correct.
And the HARB review fee of $25.
Correct.
But not the HARB violation review of $300.
Correct.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I was clear on that. Thank you. Anybody else from the public? Seeing nobody, do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to move this forward favorably to the whole council for the December 5th meeting.
Do we have a second?
I wanted second that if we lower that $300,000 like Mr. Finley said, and do it incrementally according to how much time they spent.
All right, we can.
You agree to that? Okay, I'll second that.
I withdraw my motion, because I don't agree with you on that.
Okay, I'll make the motion then, that's all.
Second.
Common consent, other than Mr. Robinson, I guess.
No.
Okay, I'm good with it for that. We'll bring it to the floor for more discussion, and then we'll have to make an amendment, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, now we got that out of the way, for now. All right, now we're gonna go to a budget review. Mr. Leitner, you can just stay right there. It's your budget. That's it. Yep. We'll move forward right away. I see you have a PowerPoint here.
Yes. As your PowerPoint comes up, I want to first thank all the stakeholders and our partners that are here tonight, and the team, the staff. Thank everybody for being here and supporting this budget. Before I dive into the budget, as you all know, that community economic development, as we go through our transformation, to me, I think is predicated on the employees' response, and from you all, I like to use the word grace. The extension of grace that we need to look at as we go through this process produces a couple of different things. It produces cooperation instead of competition amongst us and amongst our partners. It also produces an understanding instead of grudges. And it also promotes and produces harmony as opposed to discourse. So as we move forward in this budget and the people that are here, again, this is where we're trying to strive for. As a team that sits behind me here and the partners that are here, we are trying to come to a collaborative efforts to work together. And in order to do that, it's going to take some funding. All right, and the budget we're presenting to you, we are not putting anything in there that's out of the ordinary, but everything that's in here, we feel that is necessary for us to move forward. So I do have a PowerPoint here. And as you look at these numbers, to you guys that see this, it may not mean anything to you when you look at these numbers. But when we look at, but from the team and CED, these numbers we face these numbers every day. And as we make our decision and as we move forward, we have to keep in consideration what these numbers mean to us. 18 square miles, city of Allentown, 120,000 population. You look at the 30,485, those are tax parcels with residential living units, that's residential living units in there. You got 3,540 tax parcels with no residential living units. So these consist of our government buildings, our vacant properties, our commercial buildings. You got 10,992 rental resident properties. These are properties, not units, but properties. 19,854 residential non-rental properties, owner-occupied properties. You have 25,672 total rental units. These are the numbers that we have to face every day as you guys decide on this budget. When you talk about meeting the needs of the population, how much square mileage we have to cover, and all these different units and properties that we have. You have 8,674 total units for 2018 that need to be inspected. I reiterate that, 8,674 units that need to be inspected. That's for 2018. We have another 7,183 listed for 2019. So to date, at this moment, we have 15,857 total rental units that need to be inspected for 2018 and 2019. This can't be done on a limited budget, and this can't be done with a limited staff.
Let me interrupt you real quick. The 8,674 for 2018, how many of those are done?
Out of those, we have 2,462 that need to be finished this year. 2,462 that we have to finish this year in 2 months.
You're telling us you're gonna have it done?
I'm not telling you that at all.
No, we're kidding.
Depends on
Go ahead.
how my budget goes. My clicker's not working. All right, there we go. All right, so as we move forward, CD, we decided to put together, we have priorities, outcomes, benchmarks, and strategies. So as we move forward and we put this together, we improve and we set these in place so that we set our priorities right, and then we can measure our outcomes. And when I talk about outcomes, I'm looking at what our desired results are going to be. Not just ours from CED, but from our partners and from you all, and from the citizens. What are the results that they want done? So when we talk about properties, we're talking about units, we're talking about development, what's the outcome that they're looking for? What's the desired results? So that's how we're going to start gauging ourselves. And then when we talk about benchmarks, we're talking about the possible indicators for the community, and how they look at us, how we're making progress. And then our strategy is nothing more than, suggestions and how we're going to move forward, not only from what works best or what we call best practices, but but again, what our partners are saying, what our partners feel that they can achieve as well. So this is how we're setting our goals within community and economic development. Even though HUD is not actually in the grant, but, are in this budget, but they are because, again, it is a grant-funded, department, but at the same time, we do use general fund dollars and then we get reimbursed with the HUD funds. So as of now, what you're seeing before you is creatively, we want to manage the $6.4 million that we have during 2017 and 2018. And we want to utilize these funds to assist with the upkeep, infrastructure, combat the aging housing stock, focus our efforts on the low to moderate income, and also focus again on homelessness issues. As of now as well, HUD is dealing with, right now, clearing up 20 findings that date back to 2009 to 2014. It may sound easy, but that's not. Going back to 2009 to try to clear up issues with HUD, this takes time, this takes efforts. So at this point in time, that's another thing that our HUD department is working on. We plan to focus our money on capacity of the local communities, economic development partners, and the local community economic development organizations. Again, as I said, we're trying to look at capacity. How do we utilize these funds? And then the outcome we're looking for in HUD also is to strengthen our community partners, improve our community partners' output, and also, again, utilize the funds the best way we can that are most efficient and effective way. And the way we benchmark this, again, the process is to implement community partnership and have our partners talk with us and let us know how we're moving forward. Mike, slide. So I just move forward. Anyways, with the HUD grants, there's another chart on there, and it's talking about the number of contracts that we have. Right now, HUD monitors about 45 active contracts. To date, the number of each contract that's been completed is about 40, and they're still monitoring those 40 contracts, and to date, all those contracts have been monitored and the monitors completed for this year. You look at the rapid rehousing. Right now, we've actually we've moved 53 families in the last 2 years in a rapid rehousing program. Moving on to special events. I know we don't have this slide, but I believe you guys have the slides up there. Special events, even though it just moved to CED, what we did, Christy and I, we sat down, we looked at where we want to go. And in a nutshell, we want to see special events throughout the entire city. We want to see special events, key signature events on the east side and on the south side. We have special events that happen downtown, but we also have special events that happen in the West End. But we want to make sure that we want everyone to see how great the city of Allentown is by, again, showcasing all parts of the city. So with our plan this year is to look at and how we can spread those special events throughout the city. You can see on your bar chart there these are permits that have come in. It shows you the amount of permits that were brought in through 2017. On the average right now, it looks like about 200 permits. The revenue that's generated from that is not much, but you can see where her peak seasons are, is, again, in the fall and through spring. Community housing. On the community housing aspect, there we go. To date, with community housing, as you know, community housing houses our lead hazard program. You can see on the chart there, we have over 100 children from 2017 that are exposed to elevated blood levels. Roughly about 80 of them are less than 0.19, and we have the other 20 or so that are above the elevated blood level of 20. Right now, the program focuses on those with elevated blood levels above 20. To date, we've spent, with the lead grant, over $300,000 in those homes that the kids are affected in. Now, the budget itself, this is a lead grant. We're trying to position ourselves that the money, what we're doing, everything we do now counts, because we do want to try to apply for the upcoming lead grant in 2019. This lead grant expires in June of 2019. We can start looking at the notice of funding sometime in early 2019 to see if we can apply for it, as long as we meet all the requirements that we have, all the requirements in order to apply. So to us, this is important. Even if we don't get the lead grant, we still have quite a few children and quite a few homes out there that are affected, quite a few children that are affected with lead poisoning, and quite a few homes out there that still have lead pain in them. We can move forward to the next slide, please. There you go. I got it. With community housing, not only do they focus on lead, but they focus on hazards. These are their programs that when people call in during the wintertime that they don't have heat, or during heavy rainy seasons, or during when the snow's melting that they have a leak and they can't afford it. This is where this program comes into play, where we can again address these hazards that for people that can't afford it. As of now, we are just now getting the program reactivated, but as you will see in the budget, we are trying to set aside funds to help mitigate some of these issues as they come up. We have not done any, at this point, housing rehabs, as you can see on the chart there, but we are focusing on bringing that back. We're currently working on 8th Street and currently working on 12th Street, or West Gordon, and trying to do a community work as far as focusing on those blocks, doing rehabs, doing facades, doing streetscape, in order to make a larger impact, especially coming across the 8th Street Bridge and also over by where the new school is going to be going. So hopefully in 2019, you will see some increase in that. Homestead is a program that we've used that for people that may not be able to qualify for a loan, but they're close to it, where their FICO scores maybe be 1 or 2 points off. So we work with the local bank. We actually repair the house, get the house up to code, and then they move in and we hold the loan until they're able to get their loan. We currently have we currently have 4 homesteaders. We only done 1 this year. And to date, I would tell you that each and every homesteader has paid on time. We track their payments, and out of the 4, 1 has sold their home, another one has refinanced, and the home now actually is under their name, and the other 2 right now are in the process. So this is a good program that we have, but again, it's funded very limited. Moving on to business development. This is the current situation we're running with our business development department. Again, keeping with our priorities, outcomes. If you look at the chart you have there, we have a number of new businesses. We had about 410 come into this to the city this year. We had about 157 businesses that closed. What we're trying to do with our business development department is really get an understanding of why and what's happening with the businesses. Why are they closing? Can we get ahead of that and work with them to see if there's something we can do or who we can partner with to try to prevent that from happening. We had about 48 businesses that we retained. And what we mean by that is they did reach out to us. We were able to connect them with either DJ Chromatic, and that's with Katka. They were able to help them with a business plan, as well as we have other resources we can provide for them, whether it's lending, whether it's connecting them with some type of business loan with our partner AEDC. But these are ways that we can retain a business or expand the business. We also have we had about roughly 391 business inquiries. And I bring that to your attention for a couple of different reasons. That means that people are interested in coming to the city of Allentown. But what do we do with them at that point? There's only so many resources and only so much that we have that we can help them out. I have 2 members on the business development department, and when you go right over to the next next bar graph there where it talks about the number of site tours. Our business management, Dan Diaz and Hannah Hart, spending time with them takes a lot of time. What I mean by that, when people call in, there's a lot of hand-holding. We're trying to find site selection. We're working with AEDC as well, if there's, manufacturing. But they do site selection, they take them on tours, they answer phone calls, they try to find different sorts of financing for them, working with other organizations out there to try to, again, attract these businesses so they stay here in Allentown. I like to look at a conversion ratio, and with that, when you look at 391 inquiries, and again, I just look at the lost opportunities of what we could do with those businesses that are inquiring, and those are the ones that we just actually started tracking probably around February or March of this year. So again, these are things that we're trying to make sure that in our budget that we can monitor and maintain these type of activities. Moving on to planning and zoning. I won't belabor this one too much, but he just talked to you about plans and how we review plans, the number of plans that come in, submissions, same thing with the zoning applications. You can see on the chart there itself on how many applications that have come into our department. Also, the other line you see there's the amount of hours. Again, I'm not going to go into personnel or staffing issues, but I just want one thing to understand, one thing for you guys to understand is that as we deal with each one of these, there's not a set time limit. I mean, some people think it only takes a half hour for something, but each case is different. Each application, each project, you could spend as little as a few minutes to as many as long as a couple of months on a project to try to get these things to take place. So again, you have the charts in front of you. I won't go over the number of hours and everything there, but you can see there's a lot of time and effort that's put into these. Building standards and safety. Building permits, again, Matthew was up here, Bill Harvey as well. The Director for Building Standards and Safety. These are the number of applications, plan reviews, that we've also have taken into building standards. Again, keeping the same focus as well as our priorities. Our priorities are to, when these applications come in, to get them reviewed, the plans reviewed, the applications processed. We've always had that turnaround time. If someone comes in for a permit, we try to get them the permit the same day. So all of this takes, again, efficiency and time. And the staff, I will commend that they've done a great job. Even with the resources we have, they still been maintaining a good level of service. Our rental department, our code enforcement. I gave you the numbers at the beginning of how many rental inspections that need to be done. I gave you the numbers of the number of units that this department has to deal with. One thing I didn't mention, which I'm going to move to the next, is pre-sales. Pre-sales also comes under that. We had an all-time high of homes being sold this year. We had over 2,000 applications or requests for pre-sales inspection that came in this year. Again, that's a lot. That's more than we've had over the previous years. And at the same time, these are people that are wanting to move their properties. They want to sell these properties. So we need to get out there. These are priorities for us, because as these people want to move these properties, we want to make sure that we get out there and inspect the properties and get them the outstanding violations that are there to give them time to correct these problems in order for them to sell their properties. Our Health Bureau. Looking at the slide here for the Health Bureau, the number of children that obtained immunizations, the number of adults. Again, I'm not going to read through each one of those, but you can see how active our Health Bureau has been. Not only the one department, but we can move on to their environmental, Health Bureau's environmental department, total inspections as well. And if we look at our injury prevention, this is what our Health Bureau has been actively doing over the years. Again, I'm not gonna go through each one of these, but you all can see where we are, what we've done. And I bring this to your attention for a couple different reasons. One is, you can see the numbers in the budget. I don't need to go over each number with you in the budget. I just wanted you to see what the budget is doing, what the money that you're putting into this budget, what the outcomes are. And these are just to name a limited few of the items that we do. As you know, our Health Bureau has many more departments than that. As you know, we also have the Redevelopment Authority that falls under Community and Economic Development. And each one of these other departments have other aspects within that department. So I'll leave it at that. I'll open it up for any questions pertaining to the budget or any concerns you may have.
Before we even turn to the budget, one quick question on PowerPoint, page 9. Number of new businesses was 410, number of businesses closed was 157. Do you have a number as to how many of the 157 were in that 410?
You have that there? You have that? Out of the 157 that closed, how many were how many new businesses?
You're looking at approximately 15-20%.
So a very small percentage. then.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. That was it on that question. Council, we're on the budget, so unless anybody has, Mr. Zuko, please.
Question on slide 13. The number of PCL inspections, that's for folks wanting to move out of the city, correct? Or to buy the house in the city?
Well, the pre-sale itself is, once that house is listed on the market, it's, whether people are moving out or someone's moving in, yeah, it doesn't matter. But as soon as it's listed, we have to do an inspection.
I understand that. Okay, so it didn't have a bearing on moving in or out?
No.
Okay.
All right, we'll start with council on the,
I'll have like
you want to start, Julio?
He was too kind to allow me to start before, so what do you?
I'm fine going last, because it'll mean I ask less questions if other questions are asked for me, so I think everyone wants me to go last.
Okay,
Who can ask the most questions? Okay.
I go. Okay.
Question on the slide.
Oh, okay. Hold on, Mr. Zuko had one question on the slide. He has some more, so we'll let him go first. Sure.
Okay, on the detail book, page 118, that's on the original page 13. Under account 30, the rental space for departmental meetings.
I can barely hear you.
I'm sorry. Account 30, rental space for departmental meetings, community meetings, et cetera, $9,700. Am I looking at that right? 9,200, I'm sorry.
And water,
Page 118.
yes, I'm with you.
Okay, yes, according correctly.
So the rental,
Renting 2 copiers cost $9,200.
okay, so with the copiers, Mr. Glazier brought that up earlier. We have 2 Ricoh old copiers that are still on leases. We are waiting since the IT issue came up. We have copiers that we were going to bring in and remove those leases. But for now, they gave us a month-to-month lease on those 2 copiers until they're able to bring us a new copier. So right now, we are still leasing those two copiers.
All right, and page 119, right below. Yes, go
If
ahead.
I could just expound on that just a teeny bit, and Leonard, tell me if I'm wrong. We've actually been budgeting over $13,000 for those 2 copiers. Through discussions that I've had with Mr. Leitner, because it's split on 2 line items in the general fund, plus some money in the 700 budget, which is the HUD budget, that charge for the general fund should be able to be reduced to $7,000. Am I correct?
Correct.
So, back and forth between the controller and Mr. Leitner, that 9,200 has been reduced to 7, and I guess you're gonna split this up between whatever 2 accounts you want, but a couple of lines below that, there's another $4,000 that was also budgeted for Rico, So once again, that $13,200 some dollars will be reduced to $7,000.
Yeah.
So we have some savings there.
There is, and again, as soon as IT is able to, we will be removing those copiers to get in line with the rest of the copiers.
All right, and down to page 119, under account 40, Human Relations Commissions with Annual Dinner Award Ceremony, $8,000.
Okay, with the Human Relations Awards, that has been a line item for last year, the year before. With me just taking over, we are actually looking at bringing the Human Relations Manager back. Now, with the Human Relations Dinner, that was a requirement for a while. I guess every year they were having a Human Relations Dinner. But since we no longer have a Human Relations Officer or Manager, it kind of set still for a while. But hopefully with the passage of this budget and with the new Human Relations Manager, we can reinstate that and actually utilize that. But there's something that every year they try to do that awards dinner or something. I wasn't privy to the previous years of how they conducted it, but I do know that it was something that we had to keep in the line item.
Okay. And then right under that, number 3 is the warming shelter. You have 25,000. Is that, I thought that was closed.
The warming station itself is under the YMCA now. The YMCA
Correct.
is running that.
And
We're
we're
still
giving them 25,000?
We're giving them
Okay.
25,000.
All right, I'm good with that. Under 46, down at the bottom, the photographer for other contract services, $15,000. Who are we taking pictures of?
City Council.
That's like $2,000 a piece. We're getting ripped off.
Well, Julio's worth 10, so I don't know what
But
seriously, yeah.
seriously, we were actually, this is something new. As we move forward and we're trying to move the city in a new direction, I don't know if you all have seen the Vision 2030 as we talk about our planning. We're trying to create our own photo stock within, so we don't have to go out and buy photos from other people. So as we have events, as we have the special events, as Health Bureau does their fruits and veggies and their other outreach programs, and all of our departments do things, we want to have someone that can go out and take pictures so we have our own livestock photos in-house so that we can utilize those without worrying about copyright issues or anything like that. So this is new, we haven't done it before. I'm asking for that so we can at least see and create our own stock in-house.
Doesn't Mr. Moore do that now?
No.
Doesn't go around taking pictures?
No.
Okay.
Because again, remember, a lot of our events too, we have Saturdays, nights, weekends, off hours, ribbon cuttings, all types of sorts of things that we want to show and showcase what the city's doing.
Okay, all right, next page, 120. Account 72, furniture for new hire, $5,000. That you're assuming that's
Yes.
for
That's me,
additional employee?
that's me having faith that I'm going to get the additional employee.
Okay.
That's the Human Relations Officer.
Okay, that's the right committee. Page 127, community development lights in the parkway. Account 54, repairs on displays in the gift barn. What kind of repairs are we talking about there? $15,250.
Sure, so each year, we have displays that we purchased several years ago, so that's replacing bulbs. It's also replacing some of the animators on the displays need to be updated as we go. And then as to repairs to the gift barn, that is an aging structure. It's used for storage in the upper area and below in order to make it nice enough for people to be coming in. There are some repairs to the electric and some of the lighting fixtures that we want to do in 2019 just to upgrade that space.
Okay, then right below that in account 68, the concession stand inventory is $5,000. What kind of revenue are we getting from that?
So usually when we operate our concession sales, we see a 30% margin for profit with what we purchase when we do it at our pools for our concession stands. So that's kind of what we base it off of. So 5,000, the revenue would be around 8.
Okay, thank you. Page 132, community development. Account 46, number 4 and 5. Chamber and social media, like I said, what is that? It's $110,000 worth of money.
Okay, which line are you gonna get?
150. Page 132,
Okay, line 46.
under 46, 4 and 5.
Okay, I got it. So chamber, that is our contract that we have with the Chamber of Commerce, or as we call it now, DABA, Downtown Business Alliance. Marion Huertas is here. This is where we join collaborative efforts. She does the main events here for the city, so we're talking Blues, Brews and Barbecue, Bear Fest, the Christmas tree lighting, and also the New Year's Eve celebration. So that's what that money goes towards.
Okay, all right, then page 137 under planning and zoning.
Chamber doesn't have this.
Yeah.
So that was.
Page 137. Number 4, under account 50, services rendered by solicitor, the zoning hearing board, I'm assuming that means ZHB? Aren't the
That's
solicitors,
correct.
aren't the solicitors already salaried? I'm curious what the $18,000.
That's not for,
Okay, all right.
The zoning hearing board, attorney has to be separate. They can't be a city paid solicitor.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then, also down at, number 6, it's costing us $38,570 for legal ads a year. Seems like a lot of money.
yeah, because they'll have to be publicly notified, so
Okay.
legal advertising.
All right, then on page 140, oh, never mind. Well, yes, page 140. Under building standards, count 20, actually, under insurance. Have we ever, or has anyone ever thought about looking at different insurance prices? It's almost $500,000 for the insurance.
That's the HR purchase.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, has anyone ever looked at,
Health insurance.
yeah, anyone ever looked at different plans?
Councilman Zuko, thank you. This is a very good question. And in the 3 years that I've been here, we have been taking a look at exactly whether staying with self-insurance for health insurance is the most cost-effective way to go. The predecessor, Mel's predecessor in HR, would, at least when working with the consultant team that we have at BSI on this, would say that trying to bring in an arrangement, shall we say, outside of self-insurance would involve some additional fees, management fees that would more than make up whatever sort of cost savings that could be done, which is why we have stayed with the self-insurance plan. That has been the standard view of our consulting firm BSI for the last couple of years, and why we continue to go with self-insurance.
Okay, then on page 144, under line item, I guess 0506, number 1, $25,000, which includes mayor walks. You want to explain that to me? It's OT for inspectors on call, mayor walks, clerk's return, mailing, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's overtime for our, we still left the mayor walks in there, but anytime we had a mayor's walk, we had overtime for the inspectors to be out there with it. But this is not just for the mayor's walk, this is also for on calls and everything else like that.
All right, right below page 145, under contract 46, other contract services, miscellaneous public nuisance abatements, $100,000. Is that sort of for the lawsuits for the nuisance abatement committee, or? I'm sorry, 145, right below. Under count 46, number 4.
they are. I think that's a good catch. Actually, they're transposed. It should be the other way around. It should be 175 for miscellaneous. And, no, it's, I'll have to get back to you on that one.
Huh?
I'll have to get back to you on that, okay?
Okay, next page, 146, the first one under 56 uniforms, $1,900.20 for shoes for inspectors. How many inspectors are we talking about here? How many shoes are we buying?
Safety shoes, and there's, how many inspectors we have? 11, 19?
19 inspectors? And we're paying $1,900 for,
Because it's part of the
$100
CBA.
of shoes, okay,
Yeah,
that's
that's
fair
part of
enough.
the CBA.
Yeah, that's fair,
It's
okay,
actually pretty
I'll buy you on that. And I just have a couple more, I think. Yeah. Page 154, children's car seats, count 68. There you can answer this one, 10,920. Roughly how many car seats is that?
They're roughly $54 now, but.
Yeah, they're gonna go up because of the tariffs, but I mean, we end up buying about.
Yeah, I know, it's a good program, I'm just saying, and I think from that one graph, we gave away less last year.
No,
No?
yes, there's a number of issues on those slides where our numbers have actually dropped slightly.
Yeah.
And that's due to the fact that for 1 year, we have not, almost a year, we haven't been able to fill a nursing vacancy. So unfortunately, we haven't been able to distribute as many. I'm praying we can fill that nursing vacancy. But the car seats, actually, the cost is going up because of a Chinese tariff that is now being addressed, but they're roughly $55 a car
Okay.
seat.
Yeah, I know, it's a good program, no
And
question.
it's grant funded.
Yeah,
It's not-
okay.
It's not
So
general.
then, if it's grant funded, why is it in the budget?
All the
Just my
grant dollars
curiosity.
have to go onto the budget for us to be able to spend them.
I got
And
you.
then it comes back in on our revenue side from the grant funder. So it
Okay.
shows on both sides.
Okay, thanks. Now, page 161, I'm just a little confused here, which is not hard to do. Count 46, 1 and 2, it's the same wording, and you have two different amounts.
Yes, that is because we have two different categories of payment, so to keep it clean on the books, we have both physicians and clinical nurse practitioners covered under the same line item, so we can track them separately based on putting it in twice.
Okay, thank you. Page 166, count 68.
I can't flip as fast as you go.
I'm sorry.
166, account 68, got it.
Number 4, safety software and systems maintenance food, what is that?
Yes, that is our, and this is an interesting budget item. That is a software system that tracks our restaurant inspections and makes them real data online. That is mandated by the Pennsylvania State Department of Health and Agriculture that we keep that software alive. That's a bill that you will see that we don't always pay. Because although the state mandates that we could have to pay it at any moment, if they don't send us a bill, we don't pay it. And then we don't spend it.
Okay, and I have
If they
one
send
more.
us a bill, we pay it.
And I have just
Hopefully, we
one
can
more.
keep that out of the newspaper article.
I don't edit this.
Page 182, my last question, I
Yes.
promise. Under 30 for rentals, the Alliance Hall monthly rent was, I saw was 60,800. I saw somewhere in another account, I don't recall where it was, that somebody was also paying, I think, 4,100 though?
Well, look at the mayor's budget for the multicultural center.
Okay, so different departments are paying different rents or not?
Yes, Alliance Hall is a co-op, so the 4 main agencies in Alliance Hall are now 3 main agencies in Alliance Hall, and then the extra side is the Multicultural Center.
I got
So the mayor's office rents space in the Multicultural Center, but we are the full front half under our 41,000.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's it, Mr. President?
Thank you very much, Mr. Zuko. Now, since you yielded, even though you didn't really yield since he had it anyhow, but you can go ahead.
That's okay.
Go ahead.
Whatever works. Well, first of all, you asked a lot of good questions. Limited questions I will ask. Thank you. And I'm sure Mr. Glacier has some questions that he also wants to ask, and Mr. Robinson, so I'm gonna be a little bit more general than specific. First of all, I want to say thank you for the presentation. You guys have, and your staff they do wonderful work, and you know, they all deserve our admiration because it's a tough job, especially when you're out there, especially for the inspectors. Not everybody wants to get inspected, not everybody gets along with them. So, so thank you for all the employees for being here and, for the work that you're doing. You have a very large department. I know it's very hard to put a budget like this. However, there's always a however here. I'm looking at you, Jen, I'm gonna go just on the budget book, in the general session of the budget book. And as I look at your 2018, 2019, the 2018 A&E and 2019 proposed, I couldn't, I couldn't help to not look at all the pluses. What I did basically is I looked at the 2018, and then I looked at how much it increased. And for looking at the permanent wages, 400,000. And then I go down 20,000, 7,000, those are all up. 2,000, 250, 25,000, 200,000 total personnel. Actually $1 million total personnel increase from the previous budget. And you could keep going down on the total service charges, service and charges, 300,000 plus from more than 2018. And I just kept going through every page, and I see up there are some down, but when you look at the total, it's a very large increase. So I don't want to mention all of them. You can just see them as you go through the expenditures. And I know at page 192, $1 million more, almost $1 million. And I'm not going into the details because Mr. Zucker looked at a lot of the details, but I'm looking at the just the budget itself. I mean, if I look at, let's say, page 196, and I'm looking at the total proposed was 688,408, and looking at the previous year, 476,536, 212,000. If I look at the year before, 2017, it was 217,000, and now it's 686,000, 88,000. That's pretty hefty. So I went through all of these general amounts, and I see how much they increased when we're trying to actually cut because we have such a big budget deficit of millions of dollars. I'm wondering what, let's say look at page 207. Which is, that comes with the Community Economic Development Special Events Director is coming over to your area. But I'm looking at all the contract services, 69,000. I'm not sure what it was the previous year, almost 70,000. All the services, there's a lot of things that I see that, I'm not sure what they are. And probably Mr. Leitner can tell us what it is, or Mr. Glacier later on, how much it is. And I know a lot of it is in the.
All right, I can give you the short answer, and I'll let you give the detailed answer, but.
Only if I feel the absolute need to. Thank you, sir.
All right, so I just want to take us back in time for a little bit. When I first took this seat, remember, we were short-staffed. When I took this seat, in CED itself, there were 4 employees.
How many?
4. 1, 2, 4. Well, 5. Just in the CED, the 09, 01, the very first one. Okay. Not that those positions weren't there, those positions were there. If you guys remember, those positions were always in the budget. They just were never filled. So once we took over, we actually started filling positions. So that's why you see an increase in wages because positions are now filled. The other thing you have to look at too is,
But positions were there, so was, the positions were there.
but the
so
money
was
wasn't
the-
spent.
They weren't spent.
They were vacant positions.
They weren't spent.
Right.
Those are not new positions, right?
No, I have not created any new positions.
I know, but what I'm saying is, if the position were there, the line item for the budget was also there.
Right, but you're talking about an increase that's gone up. And if I'm saying this correctly, if the position wasn't filled, there's not going to be. Are you talking about the actuals, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually comparing them to the year and the year.
Yeah. So if you didn't fill it, the actual's gonna be lower than the budget.
Yeah. Okay. So, but not only the position, I'm talking about some of the expenses as well.
And I have increased some of the expenses. Again, as I stated at the beginning, we have partners that, and what we're trying to do, when we're looking at all this development that's happening, there's things that need to take place. We can't just rely on the shiny buildings, but we're trying to create place. We're trying to create an arts community. We're trying to have events. So these things all cost money. For years, and I believe that's another increase you'll see in there, the arts, when we put 50,000 in there, for years that was never funded. But how do we create place if we don't have some type of art-based economics to it?
Funded art in the past.
Not in the last few years.
Yeah, last year we gave, money to the arts.
But it was taken away for the malware. We never spent the money on the
Oh,
arts.
okay, but
And
we
in
did-
previous years, it was never spent on the arts, it was always moved around.
Yeah, because I remember, giving money for the arts and also for, we just talked about with regards to the, Miriam's, workers projects.
So as you look at the actual, have you looked at the revenue and noticed that the revenue is going up as well?
I'm actually just looking at the expenditure. Because the revenue, they need to go, they'll come, but, I'm looking at the expenditure because I want to.
Well, the revenue won't come.
Cutting the funding, cutting the expenditures, not the revenue.
But you gotta think about the revenue won't come. When the staffing, let's look at the staffing, when we were doing code enforcement itself, that revenue, until we actually had the staff, that revenue was not coming in. So when we actually filled those positions and we started enforcing the code and having people go out there, tagging the buildings, and making sure that when these bills go out, that they go out not only once, twice, but 3 times, and then we take collective collection actions. So again, with revenue going up, that's time, and with that, staff time. So again, the expenditure's going up, but look at the revenue.
I was expecting, quite frankly, that every department was gonna be frugal enough to cut a little bit on what they expected last year.
We already did, Mr. Breeden. We already had probably, I would say.
How much was the budget last year, Mr. Mayor?
What's that?
How much was the total budget last year?
It's up this year, but on the first round, and we start, so I can give you a number. In the first round, we met with the departments, and in the second round, third round, we've already cut the structural deficit, which was much higher than the 6.2. We cut 2.7 million initially from the get-go.
And I understand what you're saying, cut, but, well, this staff, and they can tell you, they're probably sick of me, but we sat down and we went through line by line, where do we cut? We cut as much as we can, there's nowhere else to cut. And again, the city's growing, the population's growing, the development's happening, how do we cut expenses and still provide this level of services needed? As we presented to you at the beginning of Bill 84 and 85, reviewing these plans, these things are becoming more complex. Our staff is not only just serving in their current role, but they're also doing other committees, other boards they're on. And again, this city is growing, but yet you're wanting us to cut, and I don't know where else to cut.
Well, yeah, that's what I expect, obviously. And I expect it to cut a little bit, because, we have a structural deficit of $7 million.
But that's been in existence for 4 years.
Yeah, doesn't mean you have to continue to go. I mean, we gotta put a limit sometime, and we gotta make sure that we're able to provide, you know, we're in a position, unfortunately, that we gotta do more with less, okay? We have a proposed.
in that position.
We have a
We've been in that position a long time.
We have a proposed tax increase of over 25%.
After 12 years without a tax increase.
Yes, but we're not property tax.
Business, do you
Hold on.
know, does that?
Hold on, not property tax increase, but we did have income tax increase, a lot of fees increase. Believe me, I've been here, I've been approving it, okay? So, you know, you gotta look at apple to apple.
And if I could, sir, a lot of the inspections that we do is for the new development, these are mandated by the state. Permits are issued, we're mandated to follow up and do specific inspections. And every 3 years, we are audited by the state. And the mayor and city council will get a letter at their home if there's any deficiencies, so.
Well, I'm not talking about
But I
inspection.
just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, because I also get a lot of people in terms of the opposite, that we don't inspect enough, and people have not been inspected for 8 to 10 years. So, I understand, and, you know, I don't wanna get into that, because it's back and forth, and it's really not what I'm looking for. I'm looking to be as full as possible with the budget as we can, because we have, and I understand that we have a lot of low-income people coming into our city, and they need services, and I understand that. We're trying to provide as high level of services as possible, but I'm also looking at such a large department that you have, I'm looking to make sure that we have some cuts where we can, you know.
Right.
And
That's the way it is, and that's our jobs.
And I understand that, and I respect that, and like I said, we are cutting where we can, but I would like to say that for a long time, you know, the city's kind of been, we've always been just reactive, sitting on the back seat. With our department, we're trying to be proactive, we're trying to get in the front of these things. We're trying to be cutting edge, so when you see what we're doing with the comprehensive plan, you see we're gonna start looking at our zoning ordinance. You see that we're trying to create an equitable part across the entire city to touch spots in the city that haven't been touched. And when you talk about development, and you guys hear it all the time about housing and low income, I mean, this stuff is not done you can't do it on a cut budget. And this stuff takes time and money.
I understand that.
I know you do.
I understand that. You know,
Just to consider the fact that it's called economic development for a reason, is in order to grow the city, you need people within the city to help grow the economy of the city, make the city an amenable place for others to want to come back in. And let's face it, the city's been through hard times for many years now, and the city is now in a state of change, which you all know that the city hasn't seen in 50 or 100 years. Change takes resources to deal with. And I think Leonard is being very reasonable in what he
I
asks
think
for.
we're spending more. I mean, every year, our budget increases. Every single year, since I've been here, we have not, in 18 years I've been here, we have not had a budget that's less than the previous
Because
year.
union increases and our
Yeah,
healthcare
you were
costs
here
go
with this
up.
contract.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
So
It's-
we're
I'm-
fighting a losing battle.
Listen, I'm not saying that the unions increasing, I think that everybody needs to give a little piece, a little bit of it. I mean, the union can give a little bit back. And they've done that before, by the way.
Yeah, I understand. Mr. Reed, 80% of the budget is personnel costs, 80%.
I'm sorry?
80% of the budget is personnel costs.
Yeah, I can understand that.
We hear you, we understand.
And I understand you, but I think it's something that I want to make sure that we keep in mind. For all of you that are here, I mean, it's not just you, we're looking at every single department. Okay? Every single department, you just happen to do in front of us.
Well, I don't think there's anybody on this side that would ever consider offering a 26% tax increase unless it was really needed. I mean, that's not something anybody really wants to do, but they believe it's necessary to keep the city on par with where it is now and hopefully grow the city in the future.
I'm just saying what I hear from people. And we are putting here elected by the people to represent the people. And if we don't ask those questions, if we don't ask for a little bit of support from the administration, then we're not doing our job.
That's right.
You know, and some people feel like they don't want to ask those questions, tough questions, because it's not politically correct. But I'm not here to be politically correct. I'm here to do the best I can with what we have for our citizens, people that actually pay taxes in the city. And those are the people that are complaining. And those are the people that are gonna see a tax increase. Okay? That's the fact.
Can I ask you, how many calls have you received?
Believe me, a lot, first of all. I would say 10 to 12, okay? But if you look at my Facebook page, there's a lot of messages there. And you can just page to my Facebook page all the time. I mean, they're there. And people stop me on the streets and tell me, please don't increase our taxes.
So have you received any Facebook pages or calls, or whatever you want to call it, in support?
In support? Actually, I have, somebody said that with a couple of people. I talked to a couple of people who said that, yeah, we need a tax increase. But some of those people don't even live in the city, by the way. But they don't pay taxes. That's right, exactly. That's the issue. That's the issue. If I live in the city and I can make those complaints, those people make complaints and I don't live in the city that don't pay taxes, you know, what should I say?
There are plenty of people that live in this, that don't live in the city, Mr. Greedy, that do pay taxes. There are plenty of property owners who don't live in the city. There are plenty of people who work in the city who don't live in the city and pay wage taxes. So there are a lot of people that don't reside here that do pay taxes that we allocate. Just
Well, yeah.
point of clarification.
Yeah, and that's a good clarification, Mr. Robinson, because those people pay income taxes. They don't pay property taxes. We're not raising the income taxes, we're raising the property taxes this time.
If they own commercial or rental properties, yes, they do pay property taxes.
Yes, they do, yes, you're right. But that doesn't mean that we have to keep increasing taxes all the time, right?
I'm sure we'll have plenty of spirited debate when we get to the final vote, Mr. Gurini, but now it's about asking questions on specific programs, so.
That's what I did. That's what I did. I'm looking specifically at the economic development section of it. That's what I mentioned to them. So I'm not looking at any other section but the community economic development.
If I may address Mr. Zuckel's question, I said I would get back to you on,
Yeah.
on page 145.
Sorry, what page?
I'll get back to the question you asked me, page 145, the $100,000 miscellaneous
Yes.
public nuisance abatement.
Yes.
My apologies for that, because normally we have it broken down, but that's for our boarding vacant properties, securing vacant properties, emergency sewer repairs, and emergency cleanouts.
All right, well, then, there's another issue, and I certainly, I don't remember what page. There was a line item for roof repairs, demolition of properties. You remember?
Last year's budget. I had asked you about that, this $500,000 for acquisitions, facade, and,
Demolition.
yeah.
Right.
And what, so why don't you gave me a good answer, why you want to explain that?
It's page 142, account 46, and we're looking at items 1 through 4.
And just to answer your question, Mr. Mayor, at least there are at least 4 or 5 people here that will probably speak tonight that have called me and told me about raising taxes.
Okay. Yeah, so what's the difference then? That's, I guess, that's the way, what's the difference between that right there in 142 and 145? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, go ahead, ma'am.
The program that you see there, the second one that you mentioned with the $500,000, that is a totally different department. The one for building standards is for emergency call outs, but they get called out, for fires or, water line breaks and things like that.
Right.
The other one, the $500,000 is for the community housing department.
I think you're looking at some, because this is.
That had been last year's budget.
It was in last year's budget?
I'm talking
Yes.
about what's proposed for 19.
What page are you on?
147, I'm sorry, 145.
Okay. Now, those are non-emergents. You talk about,
Yes.
It's rental unit versus building, plumbing, electrical enforcement.
right, but this is non-emergency boarding contract.
Right.
This is for, again, these other ones are for contracts.
Okay, and then also there was a section somewhere, again, I didn't circle that, but I think it was the money for city line. Would have been the money for city line to come out when there's immediate or emergency boarding.
KPMN is our emergency
Right, there was a line for that. So this $100,000 is different from that? I'm not trying to confuse you, but now that you're saying these things are for this and that, then there are other line items for other things, like you were saying, city line. This is separate from that?
You see city line, where do you see city line?
100,000, you just said was for boarding up and all that.
Boarding vacant, boarding
Right.
secured, right?
So, city line is completely separate from this?
I don't believe we have a contract with the city line right now.
The reason I asked for
Stellar.
Stellar?
Stellar.
Okay, so this is separate from that?
Yes, that's
Okay,
for
so-
emergencies.
That's just for emergencies?
Yes,
for other-
I have a contract with them for emergencies.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thanks.
And
All right, thank you, Ms. Alpha.
I just have a very quick one. My colleagues did a really good job here of asking all some questions. Thank you, Mr. Zuko. Thank you. I just have one. Your printing, that went from 12,500 to 50,400. It's on 192, general. Yeah, the big one. It's right after the, it's right in the beginning, guys, 192. Yeah, 26, line 26.
Yeah, it's all the different budgets. That's everything.
That's what?
Oh, I see.
Sorry. Mr. Glady?
Ours is 10,000.
I see.
Actually, I found it in the budget. I understand, but I found the answer, so.
Yeah, we got it.
Councilwoman Affa, thank you. The biggest jump in that is that the Adventure Allentown magazine that had been in the parks budget is now in the community and economic development budget, and that came out at $28,200. So that was the big bump up.
Okay, thank you.
Should see something similar decrease in the parks budget.
I was just wondering, because Mr. Glazier's worried about the colors and black and whites, and making sure that But thank you, I understand.
I thought it was to print some more of the pictures that they're gonna take.
Yeah.
Ms. Mona, go ahead.
Black and whites for ourselves.
I have a quick question on page 14, on the community and economic development proposed budget, the PowerPoint. It says about number of childhood immunizations.
Yes.
Will that be children without any insurance?
Yes. We give immunizations to uninsured and underinsured children. So underinsured meaning that they could be insured, but they can't afford the deductible, or they have restrictions that they can't get it through a private physician. We can give it to an underinsured child.
So either or.
Either or.
Thank you.
Would that also fall under CHIPS?
If they have CHIP, we can't help them. They go to a private physician. If they don't have CHIP, that's who we get. If they're waiting for CHIP, we can help them.
And another thing, I just wanna congratulate the department, the Health Bureau. I work with different schools, and there's a lot of children who does not have insurance, and every time I refer them to the Health Bureau, you guys always help them. And I want to thank you, especially like this year, a lot of kids from PR, from Puerto Rico. You guys did a phenomenal job. A lot of them, they lost their immunization booklet, and you guys did a wonderful job for that.
Thank you very much. We have a lot of working poor right now who are trying desperately to get insurance and keep insurance. And we did see a significant rise from Puerto Rico, and we were trying to accommodate the school district as much as we could to get them into school.
You
So
guys
thank you
were
for recognizing.
respectful to the parents. compassionate and very loving.
Well, that's why it breaks my heart that without a nurse, our numbers are a little down on these charts, so we're really working diligently to try to find a nurse. We'd love to get one of those from Puerto Rico, so we're working very diligently on that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Henry?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Ledner, I'm looking at the large budget booklet. And it says throughout, line 12, FICA tax. Page 192. Increased significantly, and that's, I noticed throughout, it's still
We will confess to a misprint. There's one too many digits in one of the bureaus in there, and so that number is actually about 180,000 too high, so we're going to take that.
There was a concern.
I was too, when I saw the numbers, so yeah, we will be reducing that considerably.
Good catch.
Line 72 in the same book. Equipment jumped up from 0 for the last 2 years to 36,500.
Which line again?
Line 68. I'm sorry, no, 72.
I mean, they're small book.
The large book.
Page 192.
192.
Yes, that's what it is.
That's like transport. And that may hold true for some of them. Would that also be the reason 68, operating materials and supplies?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
Vendors?
Yes.
For the, okay, thank you. On 192 again, line 50. Other services and charges.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's Lexington Parkway, 37,000.
Okay.
37,000 additional and from special events.
Right. If we go to page 224, same book. Line 56. Uniforms.
All right, so with our zoning officers, most of our inspectors all wear uniforms. They have the shirts and jackets. So our zoning officers for a while, they have not been wearing uniforms, so that's what that's for. They're gonna start wearing their shirts and their jackets.
In other words, they're starting to enforce that they
Exactly.
recognize who
Exactly.
they are.
And you'll see the same thing in the rental budget as well, that they will start wearing their uniforms as well. Their shirts and their jackets.
And their shoes.
And their safety shoes. And the safety shoes.
If we could go to,
Safety shoes.
page 250. There again, operating materials and supplies, a jump of almost 78,000. It's line 68.
That's our new grant in the health department.
For feeding.
Feeding the hunger, yes. The grant you helped us get, that one.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that explains it. Page 253. I noticed we're going from 4 clerks to 6 clerks.
Yes, we moved them out of other programs to consolidate them all, and we made them all generalists across the board. So you'll find them decreased in other programs within this budget and consolidated into that.
That budget. So that's not an increase, it's
No.
just a transfer from another.
Correct, and council approved us to drop one of those clerical positions into a community health specialist a while ago, so we did that as well within this budget.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And the last one, page 254. Once again, line 68, operating materials and supplies.
Those are new grants that came in to generate income, both the hunger and feeding grant, as well as some increases in some of our
That's
others.
under there too. Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. Anybody else from council?
I told you if I went last, most of my questions would have been asked. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. Leitner, first and foremost, I didn't see anything in the detail book concerning this. So in the main budget book, when we're looking under the general fund on page 1, actually. And I don't know if this is your department, but I assume it is. Second to last line, 000-2934, vacant property registration. Budgeted at $225,000, not previously. Could you talk about that a little bit?
So the vacant property registry is we use ProChamps. It's an organization that when people, either foreclosures, when banks are taking property through foreclosure, or people are leaving their property, they're supposed to register with this organization so we can know which properties are vacant. There is a fee for them to register, and that fee is split between us and the organization ProChamps.
Okay, and this is something new that we are doing that we have not done previously, or just hasn't been budgeted properly previously?
It hasn't been budgeted properly previously, but it's something we've done for at least 5 years or so.
Okay, excellent. All right, so going over to the detail, let me just grab my notes here. Okay, so on page, we already touched on the copiers, and just to touch on that again, that's number's probably gonna be greatly less if IT installs the copiers earlier, correct?
Right, and we're gonna do some changes within the budget as well.
Okay.
Mr. Glazer's guidance.
We are all lucky for that guidance, so I don't know where we'd be if we didn't have it. So, okay. So page 120. So account 72, if for whatever reason the human relations manager is not approved, since this is for both, are we looking at a 50-50 split in terms of office furniture for special events and the human resources manager?
Yes.
Okay. Just because I know one is an existing position that just moved, so that's why I was curious on that. Okay. In looking at, in the HUD programs administrator, so actually if we look, flipping back to the main budget book now for the actual position, but I'm curious as to the change made, we're looking at page 195, with the HUD's grant accountant and how that's been changed since we had in the 2017 and 2018 budget, there was a percentage of it, nothing budgeted, but if you could just touch on what's changed with how we deal with HUD for that, for my edification more than anything else.
All right, so with the accountant, we still wanted the position, but based off what we're going through right now, it's still listed there, but there's not we didn't put reserve for, normally put the dollar in there.
Right.
We're just kind of waiting right now to see after the budget, as well as with staffing, with talking with the mayor and Joe, and that's actually, with all the departments, we're just kind of looking and weighing and see which positions are more important, or not more important, but how we prioritize those positions. So right now, I just took it out.
Okay, all right. All right. I actually have I wonder if we could get sort of a program overview, since this is the first time that special event, well, I shouldn't say first time in a long time that special events is going to be under community and economic development. I was wondering if you and Christy could maybe give us sort of a program overview as to what's staying the same, what's changing, and how it's integrating into the new department.
So as she's making her way up, Christy and I have talked, as I stated earlier in the presentation, we do want to make sure that we have special events throughout the city. So a couple of things Christy and I talked about again is some signature key events on the east side and on the south side, but as well as how do we expand the current events that we have right now. So at this point, we're still in that preliminary stage of discussion to see where we go with the budget and how we can start aligning these efforts with other things that are happening. And I'll let Christy talk about that.
Thank you.
So were you just looking for kind of an overview of this budget specifically?
Sort of, and how, if anything's changed from when your position was at Parks to being in CED. Most specifically, I'm looking at is if you're still gonna have any involvement with any of the events that are run in the parks that you were previously involved with, I mean, I see we have the fireworks and some other things in here still, but just sort of how the program has changed and evolved by moving into the department.
Sure, so the Halloween parade you'll still see in here, the 4th of July fireworks, all the entertainment that goes along with that will still be here. I will still oversee the 200 permits that are held throughout mostly the park system, but also the road races and the block parties and the other events that happen throughout the city. Definitely still in close partnership with the Parks Department. I just came from a Lights in the Parkway kind of dry run through for us to preview it. So I'm still working very closely with that department to make sure the parks are respected and that we're hosting events in our parks and showcasing them. So in terms of pulling budgetarily, we looked at the Trexler budget, the parks budget, the recreation budget, and kind of pulled line items that related to special events and to marketing the city. So you'll see the Adventure Allentown came over to the Community and Economic Development Department because over the past few years, while it showcases the Parks Department, it has also showcased other departments and other special events that are held throughout the city. So that publication kind of came over, and we're gonna have further discussions about how that's gonna shift and possibly move towards a citywide type of publication rather than just focusing on parks and recreation. Trying to see what else is in here. That's kind of it for special events.
Okay. I did have one or two questions for you, and thank you for that, Christy. I was just asked to ask you about the PAL contribution for the fireworks, if there's any chance of that returning.
You mean having the PAL staff on site?
Yes.
Yes, we would really like that to return. That's definitely a conversation I'd like to have. In the past, the PAL officers have stood at the entrances for the fireworks display and asked for donations, and it's gone towards the PAL program. I would love to bring that back, absolutely, for next year.
I didn't quite ask the question right, so I'm going to yield to Mr. Zuckel.
Okay.
Maybe I didn't present it right. PAL used to pay for most of that through those deductions. And I see you have, what, I think $12,000 in here for that? I guess my question was, is there a chance of getting PAL to pay for that again versus the city?
I was not here when it was shifted from PAL, so I'm not sure what precipitated that decision. I know that in the past 4 or 5 years, it's been in a budget line item for special events, and it is still in for 2019, so. In the immediate next year, future, doesn't sound like it, but it could be a conversation.
With Adventure Allentown, I just have a question concerning the distribution fee. What are we doing with distribution?
So that fee pays for distribution through the morning call, so we pick zones that align with the places in Allentown that we can't get there through the school district quite as well, because we do distribute through the school district, so we look geographically at the zones that we're missing or that have a higher density, so we try to hit those zones through the morning call distribution.
Okay, and with account 50, the marketing and advertising expenses, could you give us an overview of what we're looking at for those?
Sure, so we advertise for the 4th of July on the radio and in the morning call or digital ads through their website. And we do the same thing for the Halloween parade, so those are the 2 major items for that. But also on occasion, if there's a number of large events happening in the same day or like, for example, September 15th this year was a huge day in the city. So we had 3 or 4 different events going on in different areas. So we did a regional push through Discover Lehigh Valley to try to attract people from outside of the immediate Lehigh Valley to come in and enjoy Allentown in multiple different areas.
Okay. Okay. In Lights in the Park, we're looking at page 127. So in account 50, we're looking at $7,000 for credit card fees.
This is the first time you'll see this in the budget because Lights in the Park is kind of a unique budget to plan for because we're proposing next year's budget before we've gone through the 2018 season. So we're usually a year behind. So $7,000 is based on our very first year of using credit cards as to what it came out to about what it will be.
Okay. And how are the credit card machine is gonna be managed? Because I know the other night, when Mr. Liebert was here, he was saying that, we are not yet up to PCI compliance status to be able to use it for the city. So I'm just curious, are we using a third-party vendor for that, or how we're doing that right now?
Yes, so we contract with an event management app and
Okay.
website to sell advanced sale tickets. So the credit card fees is a line item for us to document the hit on our revenue, but we do not directly pay for the credit card fees. It's on the end user. We just take a hit in our revenue, so we have to document that.
So right now, these credit card fees are more for people who do the advanced ticket purchases?
Correct.
Okay, I want to make sure, because I didn't know if we were looking to have credit card payment for people who showed up without advanced
We
tickets.
do both.
We do both, okay, so I wasn't sure.
So operationally, for us, one thing that we found within the past couple of years is that the line is slowed down at Lights in the Parkway when we take cash and make change.
Right.
So the advanced ticket sales allows us to get more customers through faster, and have people wait less time in line and back up traffic in the city less. So all of those things were kind of why we shifted towards credit card sales.
Excellent. That was all the questions I had for you, and I appreciate that, and I welcome you to falling under Community and Economic Development and back to City Hall. Mr. Leitner, I have a question for you on page 129, looking at the training account, training professional development 34 account. Just curious why we've seen such a drop in training from 16,000 to 5,000.
So the training, originally, we had money budgeted for when we were training the lead contractors. So that was part of a grant, and that money has been spent, so
Okay.
that's where the drop is.
Just wanted to make sure, because I know one of the things we're looking at is all across the board enforced training, so I was curious about that one. With account 46, so we're looking at a rather large drop here. Is that, could you just give us a quick rundown as to why there's such a large drop? I assume it's lead, but I just wanted to double check.
Is that the 46?
So that's gonna be the
Okay.
HUD lead hazard control, reallocation, temporary housing, HUD relocation,
Yes.
temporary pet housing, lead hazard control, and dust wipe fees.
Correct, and there was a drop in that. Again, we had money allocated for several other rehabilitation projects that we were working on.
Okay.
And again, that was all supposed to be grant funded. The HUD funds weren't released.
Okay.
And so that money was just never spent.
Okay, fantastic. On page 132, when we are looking at other contract services, and this might be more of a question for Mr. Hartzell, but line 1, the AEDC loan and grant servicing fee, $15,000, is that something attached to the 2006 pension loan?
No, it's not.
Okay, could you let me know what that's
So,
regards to?
AED, here, actually. Where's Dan? Sorry, right this tab.
Yes, so those agreements relate to the administration and management of two revolving loan funds.
Okay.
One of those being the Allentown Economic Development Loan Fund, and the other one being the Enterprise Zone Loan Fund. The first is really more for commercial projects, the second is more for manufacturing. So essentially, AEDC does the credit underwriting, they manage the loan committees, loan closings, as well as the billings. They follow up with the borrowers and work with them on payments, business development, technical training, as well as, they meet with them on a regular, at least 12 times per year. And I understand that these funds have kind of remained the same for some time, but as we've now had more loans coming through, there's more activity, that's one reason why we've looked to
Seems
increase
there's an
that.
uptick.
Correct.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Mr. Diaz. I just have a question, because I know we touched on the chamber fee, which we get a pretty good bang for our buck on that. But I'm curious what, we never touched on number 5, the social media microsites design fees, what that is in relation to.
Yes, so just to elaborate on that particular project, this is the implementation of a citywide social media and video marketing series that's going to essentially engage and showcase city businesses, neighborhoods, promote CED programs, and encourage investment in the city. More specifically, the microsites that you're referring to are going to be platforms highlighting perhaps the south side, east side businesses. It could serve as a directory for those businesses, highlighting certain activities that are taking place, and this would then be linked to the city website. So I think it's a great way for us to publicize all the great businesses that we have throughout the city, not just on Hamilton, but throughout.
And is this solely a development cost on this, Mr. Diaz, or does it include any type of marketing as well of it on social media platforms?
I think some media buy will be built into that as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I just have one or two sort of overview questions, Mr. Leitner, and then a couple questions on the budget memo that we received right before council started. So first and foremost, with the overview, what role do you see in the coming year an attempt to try and make technological advancements playing in your department?
Well, at this moment, technology, we've kind of, based off budget, and come to Mr. Julio's point, we were looking to put $250,000 into the budget in order to change our software system for code enforcement, for health, for any of our inspectors. So we, based off the situation where we took that out of the budget.
So you made a cut on that already?
The $250,000 cut, yes.
Okay.
But what we're looking to do is work with what we have right now. So if Eden's there, can we work with them to see if they can kind of enhance some things that we're trying to do? We've set aside some funds in the account as well that you'll see, that we're gonna utilize those funds to try to get some private one-on-one time with Eden to help us kind of either create some codes or do what we need to do to adjust so that the system works a little bit, it's a little bit more user-friendly for us to track a lot of things we're trying to track.
Okay. In regards to the inspections that are being conducted currently, last year there was a change in personnel designations to make combined inspectors. I know as of a few weeks ago, we were still did not have those positions filled. Have they just not been advertised, or are you having a problem filling those positions because of the enhanced requirements for certifications?
We actually, I'm gonna let Bill talk on this a little bit more.
Okay.
We just actually, after going through all the process internally, got the position posted.
Okay.
So we really haven't put our fillers out there. Again, we just finalized the internal process right now.
Okay.
So it's only been a few weeks since we actually posted the position.
And what's the training cost going to be on that position? Because obviously it's a bargaining unit position, so someone from parks or streets could bid into it without any certifications, if I'm correct?
No, you have to come into that position with some certifications.
Which certifications would they need to have to come into the position?
For the combination, sir?
Yes.
You would need both residential and commercial certifications. Right now, what we've done is, as Leonard said, we just finished our internal process looking at these positions again. We've created 3 different categories for this. Hopefully, it'll be somewhat easier to get qualified inspectors. Right now, there's a shortage in the state, Pennsylvania. At one time when I get into this field, years ago, there was over 5,000 inspectors. Statewide now, there's a little over 2,000.
Right.
The schools are doing what they can to try to get an interest with students. Brian is still here? Brian Geist is one of our building inspectors who returned back with us, who's actually, he does instructions for this at community college. So that is one of the problems right now. That is one of the basic reasons why it's been difficult over the last year to fill the positions.
Right.
So that's what we've tried to do internally, to reclassify them and change some of the descriptions and categorize these, and hopefully we'll be able to get some.
So all that they need to reach the combined inspector status is the building inspector to start. They don't need plumbing, electrical, or mechanical. Is that correct?
They're going to need residential certifications in the 3 fields.
Okay.
As we go up through the tiers, they'll need more commercial certifications and the residential.
So we're looking for someone who already possesses the certifications when we bid these jobs?
Yes.
Or when we
Yes.
post them, I should say.
At least
Is there any,
minimum.
okay, is there any concern with the fact that in comparison to the private sector. Someone with this level of qualifications in the private sector is gonna command a larger salary than what we're offering. Is there a concern as to, if we're expecting them to come in with those certifications already, that we might run into a potential issue with that?
Yes, you will, yes, we will, but we try to place a salary where it's at least competitive.
Okay.
And when we add the competitive with the salary and the benefits, we're hoping that we can compete with the market. Brian, if you could, you, at the school, can you just talk about a little?
Sure, yeah. We run the program of Bell Pricing, which is construction management. I actually teach 3 courses on that program. Unfortunately, the enrollment for this program at this point in time is very few and far between. I'm running those programs every 3 semesters. So it gives you the idea of the amount of students that we're actually putting through this at this point. And a lot of this is including people that are already in the construction industry. We're just looking to better themselves in the foremanship. So getting inspectors out there, in the 6 years I've been teaching up there, I have turned 4 inspectors into this program.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for working on the training aspect of it as well. Is there a point, Mr. Leitner, where if we can't find someone from the outside qualified, that it will be put up for the bid process for someone that does not currently possess the certifications?
No, we can't, because they have to have the certification in order to do the inspections.
Okay.
So if we can't fill the positions, you may see my smiling face again in front of you to restructure.
Okay.
And in our department, I like to, we have to be fluid, especially with the economy the way it is, and
Absolutely.
the things that are happening. So not that we want to continue to make change, but we have to adapt with things that are happening. So if I have to change the position again to, you know, maybe I get just a plumbing inspector, I may have to come in and ask for, instead of having 2, we may have to ask for 3 or 4. Same thing with electrical inspectors. But what we're trying to do is cut cost by, you know, utilizing our staff more efficiently. Because we talked about it at the beginning, where we didn't want to send 3 or 4 inspectors out to one place, because you have an electrical inspector, a plumber, a mechanical inspector, a building inspector, and they all have to come to your house or your place to inspect. But again, if the field is the way it is, we may have to readjust.
Thank you. On the budget memo that was handed to us beforehand, so the civic, account 40 civic contributions, the $25,000 for My Brother's Keeper. Great program, we all know David Jones, and he came and gave a presentation on it last year. Can you give us a sense as to what the $25,000 is gonna be utilized for in the program?
From my understanding, when he presented it to you guys at the last year, and in talking with Mr. Jones, the program itself is supposed to be a mentorship program in order to help young men and moving forward with whether it's jobs, going to school, education, scholarships. So there is a mentorship program. All the details of the program, I don't know all the details of like step by step how they do it, but from the understanding that it's a mentorship program.
So this is gonna be for overall operational costs of the
Yes.
program? It's not designated for any particular program that they utilize? Okay, excellent. With the general and civic and the housing fund, so this is obviously something new. You're asking to create a whole new enterprise fund. Can you talk through what you're looking at doing with this fund and the $300,000, what that's gonna be utilized for in next budget year if we approve that?
Absolutely. So many of you have heard a lot of talk about inclusionary zoning and affordable housing. As I talked to you all before and presented to you that when we do a development, a housing development, it's not in order to create the affordable housing. A housing project, when they come into us, and I'll give you an example, we had one that come in for $10 million. So they wanted to create about 40 workforce housing. But with that, there always has to be some type of subsidy. So with home funds being the way they are, home funds has restrictions on them. CDBG dollars, any of our federal dollars have restrictions. So what we're trying to do is, if we do go to this inclusionary zoning, or what we call a CBA, whichever way we go, we wanted to create an account that we have some ability to help offset those costs in order to help create affordable housing. So with those amount of funds, so if we do go to the inclusionary zoning, we want to give the developer an option that you must create X number of affordable housing. So if you're creating 10 units at market rate, and we say that in this inclusionary zoning that we want you to create 3 affordable housing units in there, they may not agree to that, but we want to give them an option. So they may agree to, we'll pay into the fund. We won't create that, we won't create those 3 affordable housing because we don't want that mixed into our development, but we will pay into your fund. So that's what that account, the enterprise fund, is for, to give options for a developer to either create or contribute. Again, we're still working out the details as far as whether we go inclusionary zoning or we go CBA. Those are things we're still kind of researching and figuring out which route we want to go. But that's what the fund is for, is to help offset to create affordable housing. Short version.
Okay, and what's the $300,000 going to do?
That's what it's there for. It's gonna help to subsidize. So if we have a developer that comes in and he wants to develop, he or she wants to develop a particular property or something, and if it fits into our comprehensive plan and it's a valuable project, we want to take those funds to help offset that cost to create affordable housing.
So are you looking at making this as a revolving fund?
Absolutely.
Okay. What do you think is realistically achievable with the $300,000? Let's just say for a minute that you bring some type of inclusionary zoning before the board and before the council, I should say, and we reject it. So all we have in there is $300,000 for next year or maybe in perpetuity. What can realistically be accomplished with that $300,000 in this fund as opposed to if we leave, we all know what will happen if we leave the $300,000 in our cash reserves. It's there for emergencies, it helps with our bond rating, it helps in every other way. What is the benefit of doing it this way if it's only $300,000 as opposed to just having that in the unencumbered balance?
Because what we're gonna do with that account is we're not just relying on the $300,000.
Of course,
We're
yes.
gonna try to find other ways to fund that account. And even with the $300,000, the way I want to set it aside is because we want to make sure that we're showing the public. And again, we have to do our part in creating affordable housing. We can't just say, okay, yeah, we'll do it, and then we have the money in the account and then we pull it out at the end of the year. We may not have a project for this year. We may not have a project for another 2 years, because even when the project comes through, it may take 2 years for the project to get finalized and ready to move forward. So each year, we're looking to increase that account. Not lose the money, but increase that account. I would like to get that account up to over a few $1 million. So when a developer comes in, we can actually do something with it. We can say, hey, here's $500,000 to go towards your affordable housing project. But again, it has to be an account that cannot be touched, strictly for housing, and has to increase over the years. I'm not looking just for a one-time $300,000.
Oh, I know.
This is gonna be an annual increase. An annual amount that goes into that. Because if we're gonna be serious about affordable housing, we have to do something about it. We can't just continue to rely on HUD funds, because HUD funds are starting to be diminished. And with HUD funds, there's too many restrictions. So we're trying to, again, do everything we can to make sure we meet those needs that are out there.
So how would you, with this program, determine, is this going to be available to the entire city as opposed to HUD funds, which is limited just to a specific geographic area?
There's a couple of things. Yes, the funds will be available throughout the entire city. And also, we have been working with HUD that we are now changing that HUD's going to be citywide, correct? Yeah.
When do we think that will be in
That's
effect?
actually now. Or
Excellent. Okay, great. That's a nice piece of news. So, I have one more question for you. I need to just find it here. Actually, no, I'm sorry, it wasn't a question. My notes are wrong. It was sort of just a statement. I know that your budget has gone up, and that is unavoidable, unfortunately. We've, for far too many years, the Economic Development Department was sort of used as similar to how the fire department was used. It was used as a cash account, and we'd take money from it when we didn't want to put money in the budget for appropriate issues. And unfortunately, we saw that going down. And I would just say in response that one of the things that I hear the most is, and this is going to all the Crime Watch meetings that I go to, community groups, speaking with people who attend council, people who reach out to me, my neighbors, is that people understand that not raising taxes in 12 years doesn't work, and most importantly, if it will make the vacant property on their block not be rat infested, if it will make sure that their neighbor's property isn't causing their heating bills to go through the roof because it's abandoned, people understand that that's a necessary thing, and it's, yes, nobody likes to pay high taxes. Nobody likes to pay taxes, period. I don't know one person who likes to pay taxes. But if we make sure that we are receiving good services for them, then like anything else in our economy, we're getting what we paid for. So I want to just say thank you, Mr. Leitner, for you and your department preparing the budget and being here. I think there's a lot of good ideas in here, and I think there's a lot of good changes in some staffing areas and some other things. So I appreciate your time and your staff's dedicated work, and I thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Robinson, can I just say one thing for the record? My budget went up by $125,000, and I think it went up for an unprecedented reason.
Grant funded.
Mayor McLean took his personal experience of dealing with children and helped us to write a Feeding Our Youth grant. He left office and Mayor O'Connell endorsed the same grant and put even more of his experience with the school district behind that. And when he couldn't attend that meeting, Councilperson Hendricks went across to Kansas City and made sure that we came home with that money. So when our budget goes up, it is important to look at that revenue. And I know that council's been supportive to me personally and to my grant, but I need to say a heartfelt thank you because sometimes our budget goes up for a really good reason.
Absolutely. And I think there's a reason why, when it came to the Bureau of Health, there were so few questions tonight. So, thank you very much, Mr. President.
All right, thank you, Mr. Robinson. Mr. Hendricks, I think.
One quick question. In the budget detail book, page 123, number 16, insurance. It's listed at $25,097. I'm hoping that isn't for 1 and 40. It is? 1 and 40? Because there's only one employee under that.
That is the per FTE allocation in the budget this year for all of the health insurance costs, not just the ones that are generated by employees and their families, but also retirees that are still part of the system until age 65, et cetera. That is the what we do is the overall distribution, we come up with the overall cost that we need, and then we distribute that on a per FTE basis across all of the departments. So yes, it comes out to $25,000 per employee.
And the letters you're using is what, per employee?
Per full-time equivalent, yes, so per full-time employee.
Okay.
But that includes all of the costs that are generated. We allocate the costs on a per employee basis. That's all of the healthcare costs, whether it's an employee or a family member who's part of the insurance plan, or retirees that are eligible for the insurance plan until they reach age 65. So it's just all of those costs are melded together as a per FTE cost.
Distributed evenly across
all of the city, yes. That number was a little over $23,000 in the 2018 budget. It's a little over $25,000 this year.
Okay, that's news. Interesting. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Hendricks. Okay. All right. The public. Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, President McLean.
I got a crick in my neck from looking to the left so much here.
It's good for you to look to the left every
Yeah,
once in a while.
no. Go ahead, Mr. Blake.
Between Saturday and today, I sent Mr. Leitner about 7 pages of questions and challenged him on many expenses. He's responded, A, quickly, and B, informatively. We found some savings, like with the copiers that we discussed earlier. There were some other things there that were duplicates that I pointed out to Mr. Leitner, and they'll be removed. I sent you a couple of follow-ups right before the meeting, and I'd like to just touch on those. The first thing is, and I think this would go a long way toward helping council and the public, is that so much of this department's budget can be grant funded. And I think it would be helpful, in the detail at least, if an expense is going to be grant funded, it should be so noted. Certainly, a lot of the health budget is like that, but also in like the lead grants, in the 2018 budget, in that line item, that 46, those were clearly marked demarcated as being, lead funded, but some of the other things in the same line item, like for the facade or for demolitions, those were not marked, so one would think they might be general fund funded items. But I think if we can, when the final detail comes out, if we can show that little bit of information, it provides clarity for council and for the public.
Other than my finances.
Yeah, I will talk with our staff about how we can get that in the final detail book, and your point is well taken, because the way, in fact, Mr. Zuckel had asked about this a little earlier on, and maybe someone else too, about the nature of grants in the budget, is the guidance that we have gotten from the independent auditors, accounting firms that have come in, has been that if a grant is going to be utilized by the city, we put it into the general fund as an operating dollar, whereas if it's passed through just for someone else, that we keep it as separate in the grant fund. But your point is well taken, and I think some clarity on that would be good.
When we look at the big book, as we refer to it, it's a technical term I hear, and we see the grant funding, we know that's categorical money. But it's very hard to make the connection when you look at the detail as to exactly what funds these things. I think that would be a help. Mr. Leitner and I discussed Zonar. Zonar is a lot of the city vehicles have them, so that we can track where a vehicle is. And that's important for any number of reasons. At least if we talk about the streets department, if somebody says my street wasn't plowed today, the streets department can go and say, you're right, or no, he was there an hour ago. We've had some discussion about appropriate budgeting for that. I'd like you to go back and look at that again and see if you can sharpen that pencil. In the scheme of things, it's not $100,000, but it might be $5, and every little bit helps there. We discussed Adventure Allentown, and that the cost for that is really broken up over 3 parts. 1 is design, 2 is printing, and 3 is distribution. We discussed distribution a little bit. I was concerned about design because $10,000 is budgeted next year and has been budgeted in the past. The expense has been about $1,700, so there's the gap there. Mr. Leitner informed me that they'd like to do an Arabic version, which I think would be a great thing. We still have a pretty decent sized population. But part of that discussion was that you'd like to explore some different ways of distribution, including electronic distribution. And then that suggests that if we're distributing this publication electronically, that our publishing, our hard copy publishing costs should go down. You may not know exactly what that is now, but hopefully we'll have some clarity on that going forward, and those numbers can be appropriately adjusted,
Actually, I can answer that.
Sure.
The cost of paper went up significantly this year, so we actually had to cut back on our fall-winter printing of Adventure Allentown, and you'll notice we did a Spanish hard copy edition in the summer, but we weren't able to in the fall because we didn't actually have enough money left in this year's budget to do that. So we will likely print less in general, but the line item will have to stay the same because paper costs went up significantly, at least partway through this year, and we're not sure about next year yet.
Okay, well, hopefully the design costs won't hit the budgeted amount. And the last thing I really want to touch on is the repair and maintenance agreements that we discussed. If you can go back and look at that again, the risk item for minor vehicles repairs is there, and then there's additional charges that are unspecified. So, okay, that's all I have. But I want to reiterate that Mr. Leitner and I did find some savings, and I appreciate with the promptness that he responded to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Glazer. Okay, now we will open it up to the public. Going once, going twice. Meeting's adjourned.
Capital.
I just want to just thank all the partners and partners that came out, and especially the staff, and Mr. Glazier.